Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mormonism Live. Today's date is Wednesday. It's March 11th, 2026, and boy, do we have a show in store for you. Hey, Bill, how are you doing? This is my co-host, Bill Reel.
How are you, RFM?
I'm great, thank you. So I guess we don't get to find out how you are?
I'm doing great. Life is good. It is Wednesday, and here we are rocking and rolling on Mormonism Live.
Yes, well, the reason I'm so excited is because we have such an important and significant guest. He's so humble, this is probably making him blush. But about 10 years ago, and over the space of 3 years, I'd say 2 to 3 years, this person was pretty much a household name, I think, in every Mormon household, at least anybody who was paying attention to what was going on with this entire situation of bishops taking children into their offices behind closed doors alone and asking them questions about their sexuality. Well, somebody took umbrage at that, big umbrage. And that somebody was Sam Young, and he did something about it. And he's going to be here to tell us his story tonight, as well as some things that have happened behind the scene while all this was going on that he's never told anybody anywhere publicly. And you'll be hearing them here for the first time. I am speaking, of course, of the legend, Sam Young. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing outstanding. I'm doing super awesome. This is a great day, and thank you for asking.
You're very, very welcome. Sam, it's so good to see you. I also want to bring on your dear friend, Randy Bell. I feel like I'm Ralph Edwards doing This Is Your Life. But I know that you two are thick as thieves. And I actually very strategically asked Randy to join us when I was talking with you at Thrive, Sam. And we were talking and you were telling me all these incredible things and how you're ready to come back into the limelight and be a public figure, so to speak, once again. And Randy is your very dear friend, and he's able to get you to talk in ways that perhaps are more free and loose than anybody else could do. So that's why Randy's here. And also on top of that, Randy's the one who discovered you. Well, he didn't discover you. He rediscovered you. And it's because of him that you're actually coming out and being public once again. Isn't that true?
I can't hear you, Randy.
Hey, Randy?
Randy, you gotta unmute.
No, Randy, that's my favorite way for you to speak. So keep going. Keep doing that.
Whoops. Now I look like RFM. Hey, I'm only here to sit in the background and use cattle prods when I need to when Sam isn't bragging enough about himself. That's why I'm here.
Well, I know you're going to be in at least one of these pictures that we have. We've got pictures, we've got video clips, we've got all sorts of things as we talk about what it was that happened with Sam Young and how he made a true and lasting imprint in the history of the LDS Church. So, Randy, here is the thumbnail. It's a picture I found on the internet, and I realized as I continued to research and replay videos and remember all the great things that you did, that this is actually a picture that was taken, obviously, across the street from the Salt Lake Temple, but it was when you were reading the letter excommunicating you. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So protect the children. That has been your motto for 10 years. And I know it continues to be today. Bill, or maybe, I don't know, Randy. Let me go with Randy. Randy, could you read this? This is early life and church service of our guest, Sam Young. And we'll find out if he wants to tell us anything about this background.
Birth. Sam was born in rural Utah. Missionary service was in Guatemala and El Salvador. He's married in the LDS Temple and raised 6 daughters in the faith and served as a bishop. So we need to refer to him as Bishop Young and Bishop Reel for 5 years in Houston, Texas during the early 1990s.
Is there anything you want to mention about that, Sam?
I guess it's fairly standard. I was about as Mormon as you could get, hitting all the milestones. And I was like, people saw my dedication to protect LDS children and protect every child. I was the same way in my service to the church. My number one priority, and I had my priorities way wrong, was the church. I thought my top priority is supposed to be God. That meant church. So anyway, yeah, I did all the church stuff really, really extreme.
Yeah. So you were a faithful Mormon.
I would say that.
Well, now something started happening with a blog. And before I put this thing back up, I'll take it off the screen here for a second. And you saw what that was. Can you lead us up to that in this blogging you were doing? Because something changes in Sam Young around 2014. Is that right?
Yeah, 2014, something happened that caused me to start looking into church history. I didn't have any shelf. I didn't have any doubts. Everything's true. Whatever the prophets say, that's the way it is. And I was good with all that. Well, something happened that caused me to start studying. And my faith transitioned from believing everything to realizing in my own head, the truth claims of the church don't work. Now, that is a really hard, tough transition that many people have gone through. It is gut wrenching. Yeah. Anyway, that was 2014, 2015.
Sam, before you go on, I know you're trying to hit the high points because we have a lot of material to cover. The audience is going to love it. I know it. Are you able to tell us what it was that triggered that research in 2014? What it was that happened?
So I've got 6 daughters. Maybe 3 of them were at the house, and we were in the kitchen. They were puttering around doing cooking and stuff. Anyway, I was there, but I just kind of not listening until I heard these words. Well, it looks like Kate Kelly is going to be excommunicated. And excommunication, that raises a question. Kate Kelly, who's Kate Kelly? Well, she thinks women should get the priesthood. As soon as they said that, I lost total interest. Women shouldn't have the priesthood. So anyway, I quit listening. A few minutes later, they said, and it looks like John Dehlin is going to get excommunicated. Now that really hooked me because I knew I had been a partner of a man named David Dehlin for a number of years, but we at some point in time split our partnership, and I lost track of him. And I kind of tend to try to reach people that I'd had relationships with in the past, and I'd lost track of him, hadn't been able to get a hold of him. And then I heard John Dehlin. Well, I knew a John Dehlin when he was about 7, 8, 9 years old, as my partner's son.
So you're from the same neck of the woods. John Dehlin is from down there.
Exactly. Well, as I did some research, it turned out that sure enough, this is the John Dehlin I knew from decades before. And then I heard him talking about some stuff, heard about the essays. So I started with the essays. So anyway, hearing the name John Dehlin, this little kid that I'd known decades before, that launched me on this mission, this exploration of the church's history.
And you mentioned the essays. It is 2014, so they've already started releasing the gospel doctrine or gospel topics essays on the church's website.
Right.
And you read those?
I read those. Those are the first things I read.
What did you think?
Pardon?
What did you think when you read the essays?
Well, I was really taken aback by them. And the more you read, the more it was, well, this doesn't really queue up very well with what I was taught. Joseph Smith was a polygamist. What I know Brigham Young was. Joseph Smith, 14-year-old girl, an angel with a flaming sword telling him he better marry that woman. You better have sex with that woman or I'm going to kill you. Oh, geez. So there was the blacks in the priesthood. I can remember that being presented. I was my wife and I were both sitting next to each other in a chapel when they announced that policy and asked for, and I shot up my hand. Yes, absolutely. I support that. Hallelujah for modern revelation. But then I learned more stuff about that in the essay. So yeah, they were kind of jolting. And then I kept reading other sources that weren't published by the church.
And did this lead into your blogging, your thoughts and feelings?
Okay. So let's just scoot over here. Look at those pretty underwear right there. I bought those underwear, those boxers I bought in 2015, November 5th, 2015. That's when I bought those. Can you guys remember any date where you bought your underwear?
No, but at this point, if you were the president of the church and if this were general priesthood session, your counselors would be getting up on both sides and gently escorting you back to your chair.
Yeah. Well, okay, good.
That's
I'm
not
just, yeah. Okay.
Tell us
So
about the boxer, Sam.
I had decided, it's 2014, 2015. Okay. The church is not true. These truth claims don't work. But I decided that's okay. My friends are all there. This is my community. My family's there. My grandkids are there. I'm going to keep going to church, which I did until November 5th, 2015. When I was driving to work, when I heard John DeLynne's podcast or whatever he had back then, the leak that this exclusion policy had been instituted. I was incensed. I was looking at, I've decided to stay in the church, even though it's not true. I like Jesus Christ. I subscribe to his teachings and stuff. And they teach about Jesus Christ here. But this was going totally opposite of Jesus Christ in my mind. I decided, okay, I am done. It's not true. I've stayed, but I'm not staying anymore. So I got off the freeway, drove to a department store and bought boxers, which I hadn't bought underwear. I mean, my wife always bought my garments, so I hadn't bought underwear for 50 years, a long, long time. And I went to the office, took off my garments, put on my boxers. And that night, Texas A&M had a playoff football game, and we'd gone to a sports restaurant to watch the game. And my wife, as a kind of a love gesture, as we're sitting there having a great time, I had a short sleeve shirt on. She put her hand up my sleeve. Oh man, I was hoping, stop, don't go any further, go any further. She realized I didn't have garments. Now, nobody outside of the Mormon world would realize how serious that is to take off your garments. It is a shocking thing.
Your wife was giving you a garment check at the game?
She wasn't giving me a garment check. She was just as a love thing.
Oh, I see.
Okay. It was not a
The
garment check.
check was just incidental.
It was a love gesture that resulted in a big shock to her. So she was horrified. That ended our dinner. We went home, and when we got home, now she had known that I already transitioned to not believing in the church, but I decided to stay. But garments, that's a whole nother level. Isn't that odd? The garments is a whole nother level. So we got home, we started to talk about it, and the word divorce at some point in time was mentioned.
By you or your wife?
No, I don't want a divorce. But
or your wife mentioned it.
But my wife, in one of the sentences, said that word. And again, can you imagine that? Divorce being mentioned because I don't have my garments on. Okay, but it is a serious, you all understand that concept.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as she said that, I'm right back in church because I decided I'm not going to church, not wearing garments. I'm done with church. Once that word was, I did not want to take any chances with the possibility that our relationship would be fractured. Mm. So I started wearing my garments again and took off my, no longer wore boxers. And I continued to wear garments until the day I was excommunicated. Now, so all that happened, but so I'm staying in the church, but I am incensed with this thing. I got to do something. And so I decided I'm going to start voting opposed. That policy was promulgated supposedly by revelation by 15 men. I'm going to start voting opposed to them. Well, that's a really hard thing to do. And so I started off by I started a blog to kind of introduce that this is the direction I'm going. Now, initially, there weren't many people looking at my blog, but so that's what the blog was started for. But I ended up blogging about.
Sam, can I hold you on the blog for a second? Because I'm sure people in the audience are saying they're hearing a noise, and I'm just asking about the noise. It sounds like there's some talking, or maybe in another room, or
Yes. So let me go out
at your place,
and ask them
Sam.
to be quiet. So just a second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. They're missing their grandpa. Well, it's not like he's on ABC.
I don't know what that is in the corner of the boxers. Is that like a pizza or something?
Okay, hopefully that'll stop it. I got kids and grandkids in the house.
Duct tape usually does the trick.
Yeah.
So you were talking about you started blogging to let people know what direction you were heading with your idea about voting opposed, because you got to wear garments. You're going to vote opposed.
Well, that's basically what it was. But I didn't start it out, I'm voting opposed. I started talking about common consent. Anyway, but I ended up doing that blogging thing all through this process. For example, I blogged about all the interviews that I had with our stake president. When we had an interview when I met with the stake president, which was a bunch, I'm going to be blogging about that. And one time he complained about it. He says, Sam, don't write about this. And I said, well, I want to write about it. Are you concerned that I'm not getting it right? Well, he might not get it right. I said, okay. I put my phone on his desk and said, let's go ahead and record this one so I get every word exactly right. Well,
so you are blogging publicly about your private meetings with the stake president.
Right, because I'm looking at my private meetings. We're not talking about stuff we're not talking about me. We're talking about there was various issues we're talking about, but they weren't personal or private issues.
I wasn't trying to challenge you. I was just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
And now if I can ask this follow-up question, why did you have to meet with the stake president so much? Was that his idea or yours?
Mine. So initially it was so in 2015, I'm now seeing people like me that are questioning, have doubts, faith transition, but they don't have any place they can talk about these concerns. Gut-wrenching journey, and you can't talk to any of your friends about it. And so I initially talked to the bishop and the stake president about, why don't we have some kind of meeting where we can discuss these things? So I was meeting with him. I had 2 or 3 meetings over the course of about 6 months. After about 3 months, nothing was happening. I went ahead and started my own thing and called it a talkeria and just put it out there. Every Thursday, I'm going to be at James Coney Island Hot Dog. I'll buy you a hot dog if you want to come talk about concerns about that you're going through. We had people that left the church, people that were struggling with faith transition, people that were active and had high state callings, ward callings, but they had decided to stay like me. But it was basically a support group for anybody that wanted to talk about stuff you can't talk about at church.
By the way, if I understand what you've told me before correctly, the stake president, not just your stake president, also a good friend. Is that correct?
Well, he was definitely a friend. We didn't go out to dinner or stuff, but yeah, he was definitely a friend.
Right. Did anything memorable happen at your taqueria?
Well, I blogged about a lot of the taquerias too. I would announce them on my blog and then blog about it. I should have reviewed some of those, but yeah, a lot of significant things happened. One that I love was a couple that were in college and they were in the singles ward. They had met there, got engaged. And they came to a taqueria and said they're having a really hard time because there's nobody to talk about this. They're ready to leave the church. Well, their bishop was a really good friend of mine. And I'm thinking, okay, these guys can't go talk to him, but they can come to the taqueria. Well, how interesting. They ended up leaving the church, and they asked me to marry him. I thought that was pretty cool. So I got to perform that wedding for a couple that came to the Taqueria. There's lots of great stories. I'm just not remembering them all.
Yeah, I feel like you've been a bishop to a lot of people, maybe a lot more than just for a certain ward for 5 years. Sam, you know the slide I've got, the comment that was made? This is the one I just took down. Can you lead us up to this one? This was on your blog, remember?
So yes, this is a comment by Carolyn Pearson. Now I felt like I was a nobody. Okay, and I didn't feel like I was nobody. I felt like nobody's really following these things. I'm putting them out there. And this is before Protect the Children. Okay. And I'm kind of going to church and seeing some of my friends leave. And I'm looking at, it's kind of sad that my friends are leaving. That they used to sit next to me in church. We used to have a good relationship. I've still got a great relationship with them because they've left the church and they know where I stand on the church. So we've got a great relationship, but it's kind of sad they're not at church anymore. So I wrote a kind of in poetic form, a blog post, empty chairs and empty tables. A take from the Les Miserables song. And so anyway, I wrote this thing, and by golly, it turned out to get a ton of response. Like you'd get 200 or 300 people look at these things. This was like, 10,000 people looked at it. And then this comment popped up from Carolyn Pearson. Maybe that's why people were looking at it, because she commented on it.
And what was it she wrote?
Do you want me to read that? Break my heart, Sam. Thanks for the beautiful sorrow. We live in a latter-day tragedy. God bless. Those simple words.
How nice. And so you say when you saw this comment, obviously we all understand that we appreciate all comments. Sometimes you see something like this and you think, wow, Carolyn Pearson is noticing my little blog.
Yeah.
It can be a shot in the arm, huh?
Yeah, it was a shot in the arm and a shock that, wow, somebody that knows how to write cool stuff like this little blog post that I did.
Yes, and that she's saying how much she enjoyed it. All right, well, let's see what this next one here. The path to activism. I want to read this, okay? Actually, I want to have Randy read this. Hey, Bill, do you want to read anything? Are you completely occupied down there doing what you're doing? I'm happy to have you read.
No, I'm happy to read wherever you want me to.
Okay, can you read this, The Path to Activism? And then I want to go back to Sam and ask him some questions about it.
Yeah, no worries. So the path to activism, this is during the years of 2016, 2017. So in October of 2016, Sam began engaging in a form of internal protest called voting opposed, where he remained an active member but openly disagreed with certain church policies. And then in October 2017, Sam launched the Protect LDS Children petition after learning that his daughters had been asked sexually explicit questions during private interviews. And then in December of 2017, Sam started the protectldschildren.com blog to collect and share testimonies from other members who felt harmed by the interview process. And then I don't know what this means, Sam, but
that's a prompt for me, really, to remember to ask him about issues in gathering the stories and relating to confidentiality, etc. All right, let's go back to October 2016, because I don't think you've really told us this. You've told us that you're planning on going and you're going to vote opposed. Did you actually ever do so?
I did. So the first, so I was leading up to this on the blog. The first time I voted opposed was at General Conference here at my stake center in Houston. So I went there, you got 15 missionaries, you've got a few members, because most people now have the internet, they watch it on the internet. But that was the first place. That wasn't too intimidating. It was a little bit intimidating.
What happened?
When they asked for the vote, whoever asked for it, I can't remember who it was, the general authority, they then said, for those, if you vote opposed, please please contact your stake president. So I did. I sent an email to my stake president that this is what's going on. Now, I had already been meeting with him about things. So we would have talked a little bit about the reason I was opposed, because I was opposing the gay exclusion policy. I hadn't started to protect LDS children yet. And he said, okay, fine. Don't worry about it. Good. Because now I've started meeting with him. Let's see. No, I haven't started talking to him yet about the children stuff. So that was the first. The next was at Ward Conference. Now that was super intimidating and I kind of sat.
Sam, can I just explain something for the audience? Because I was starting to get hazy on it too. When we are asked to vote to sustain the leaders of the top 15, the apostles, and the first presidency of the church, that happens twice a year at General Conference. But it also happens 2 other times a year at State Conference. And it also happens, I think, 2 other times of the year at Ward Conference, when everybody's asked to do this. So this is what Sam is talking about. It had me confused a little bit with the chronology until I realized what you were saying. The first time was at State Conference when you were asked to sustain and you opposed.
No, the first time was General Conference in my stake center. Where they're
okay, so was that April then of 2017?
The first time I vote opposed would have been in 2015, probably April 2015.
Okay, yes, because it was November of 2015.
Oh, so it would have been 2016, April 2016.
Yes, okay, you finally got it. That's right. Okay, so go ahead. But I'm just clarifying for the audience that we actually we're called upon to do that 6 times a year.
And they ask for a sustaining vote. Everybody raises their hand. Then they ask for a any opposed. Yes. Nobody. I've never, ever seen anybody do it.
Doesn't happen.
And so, as a bishop, they teach you get very little training, but we're told at some point in time, if somebody votes opposed, just ask them to come talk to you and explain what it is. Okay. So the next one was Ward Conference. Now this is intimidating, scary, because you're amongst all your friends and you're going to vote opposed. So that was rather scary to do that. The next one was State Conference. Now,
did anybody say anything to you? Like, Sam, what are you doing?
I think I probably had some discussions, but I don't think I had many discussions. I probably had some discussions with some friends that were they knew the church wasn't true, or they were atheists and coming to church. I mean, that kind of, you discover these interesting things about people you never knew.
Were they voting opposed?
Pardon? No, nobody's voting opposed.
Just you, huh?
Yeah. And and at that time it was about the gay exclusion policy, and that was it. Now I am adding more things as time went on. But when the State Conference hit, I was just a few rows back. And so when I voted opposed, the counselor for the state presidency simply looked at me nicely and said something about, I recognize your vote, or something like that, because now they're used to me voting opposed. And then I can't remember which year it was. I did go to Salt Lake City and vote opposed. And that was, by now I'm getting used to it, because at that point I had done 2 state conferences, I'd done 2 ward conferences. Now the general conference, well, that's a little scarier deal. I managed to get 3 tickets, which tickets are not easy to get. And I didn't feel comfortable asking my state president, can you give me a ticket to go? Because he'll know I'm going to be voting opposed.
How did you get one then?
Pardon?
How did you get a ticket if not through your state president?
That's one secret I'm not going to tell. I'm going to die with that secret. Okay. So I put it out probably on Ex-Mormon, probably on some of the private Mormon things. Anybody know how I can get a ticket? Well, I found somebody to give me a ticket. In fact, they gave me 3 tickets.
Was it Mike Norton?
Pardon?
Was it Mike Norton? I understand he deals in forged documents.
Nope, not Mike. So I get there and it's just me. I don't have anybody to vote with. So I put it out someplace, probably ex-Mormon. I've got 2 extra tickets. Does anybody want to come with me to General Conference? I had 2 people volunteer to come with me. And it's interesting. They were both women. Well, one was a woman. One was a transgender woman who was maybe a senior in high school. I'm forgetting. I'm going to offend somebody. Maybe it was a girl that had transitioned to a boy. I can't read. Damn it. I think it was a girl transitioned to a boy. Okay. And for anybody I'm attending,
person in high school.
Yeah. Okay. So and I had already known both of them a little teeny bit. We had corresponded. Well, so I've got a transgender and the other one, we got talking about things and I said LGBTIA. And I think I asked her, what does the A mean? And I forgot. What does it mean? It means no sex. It means
asexual.
Asexual. So she said, what means asexual? And I'm asexual. I thought, oh my gosh, okay, fine. Asexual, I've never heard of that before, or I didn't know what that meant. And transgender. Great. That's who this conversation we're having, this is before conference. Everybody around had to hear us because I was not whispering. I wasn't shouting, but you overhear things.
Are you in your seats?
Yes, we're in our seats. Okay, because you get there an hour in advance or whatever. Okay, now the time came to vote opposed or to vote opposed. So they announced, and I do that 3 times because they announced the general authorities in various ways 3 times. And that was, I stood up and shouted opposed. Now the other 2, for some reason, didn't stand up the first time. So it was just me. The next 2 times, it was the 3 of us shouting opposed. And the reason you shout it's not out of disrespect. It is, you're there to vote opposed. You raise your hand. It's not going to be registered by the guys down by the podium. I want them to know. They're asking me, I'm going to tell them. At that point in time, some guards, I guess, came up closer to where we were at.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, security men dressed like security guys in suits and whatnot. But all they did was keep an eye on us. There was no hassle after we voted opposed.
Well, that's good to know.
And at that point, I was voting opposed about the gay policy, but also about 2 or 3 other issues. And like that, you have to get married in the temple with that, which they changed that policy too.
Mm-hmm.
And then
the policy you're talking about is that you have to get married in the temple, not civilly. And the enforcement mechanism for that is if you get married civilly, you have to wait for a year before you can get married in the temple. And that's what they changed, right? Now you can get married civilly and then temple the next day.
Okay, so that was my voting opposed history.
All right. Well, we want to, by the way, Randy, Bill, if you want to make any comments here before we segue into his Protect Children and what it was that initiated that, go for it.
I'm just here to keep Sam on the straight and narrow and make sure all the great stuff about him comes out. So I'm good. Keep going, Sam.
You too, Bill. I think I'm the only one who's mute free tonight.
Yeah, I've got things to say, but not at this part of the show. So, yeah, I'd much rather just you guys keep going and let's hear Sam's story.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sam, something happened with you and one of your 6 daughters in 2017.
Okay, so now with this, I actually had a petition about voting opposed. It got some traction. There were some people that actually went and voted opposed various places and came back and posted that. Anyway, so I was getting some traction as far as people knowing me. And then this thing about children's interviews, I started to hear about raising the bar. You can't go if you've masturbated. This kid couldn't go at all because he never could get masturbation under control. This guy masturbated.
Going on your mission. Going on your mission.
On a mission.
Yeah.
And so I started to put that on Facebook, ask questions about that. Anybody here ask explicit questions? Because I had never heard of explicit questions in bishops' interviews. I was never asked them. I was never asked if I masturbate. I never asked a kid, why in the world would a thought come into your head and think, oh, you're a cute girl, do you masturbate? Whoa. Those were not thoughts that I had never had. And so I'm starting that, and then I'm getting response after response. Then people didn't want to put it on the comments, but they put it on a message to me, and these, nasty things that are being asked kids by bishops. And after, something did happen before I asked that. This was the trigger. So I was a home teacher for 10 years to a certain man, and he's, you guys can be intimidating. I'm a mouse. Okay. I don't intimidate, but this guy home taught, he's Mr. Intimidation. He served in the Vietnam War behind the lines. He didn't wear a dog tag. He didn't wear a uniform. He then became a policeman. If you just think of somebody intimidating just to be with, he was that guy. Well, we got to know each other and got to be friends, and he wasn't intimidating anymore. But finally, after 10 years, I decided to ask him. Now, I don't believe anymore, but I decided to ask him why he hadn't been to church in 10 years. And he said this, Sam, because his kid had kids about my age, and so my kids' age. So they were raised with my kids in the young men, young women. And he said, we went to church, started going, and one day one of my sons came in and said, I have two sons, one came in and said, Dad, the bishop wants to meet with me. He was worried. The bishop told him, don't worry about it. I'll just sit on the couch outside. If you're uncomfortable, just come on out. Okay. Within just a few minutes, his son rushes out of the bishop's office, eyes wide open, flushed, and said, Dad, the bishop just asked me if I masturbate and if I have sex with other boys, sex with other boys. Oh, Mr. Intimidation stood up, walked into the bishop's office. He said, I leaned over that desk and I said to him, if you ever ask one of my children, one of my boys, a question like that again, I will beat you to a pulp. Well, as opposed to risking his children having that happen again, he quit coming to church. Okay. Now that's when I started asking questions on Facebook and started getting responses. Probably 2 or 3 months after this, I didn't have intimidation courage, but somehow I got the courage to ask my own child the question. She was 26 at the time, so 8 years out of Young Women's. I asked her, honey, and I'd never said this word in my household, any of my kids, honey, did the bishop ever ask you if you masturbate? She said, yes, Dad. And I asked, I can't remember what the next question I asked, but the next thing she said after that question was, Dad, I asked my friends, they didn't know what it was. So I went to the internet and I found what it was, how to do it. And I found pornography, Dad, at 12 years old. Now see, I want to use the words that are inappropriate here. They're in my head right now. I get angry and sad every single time I tell this story or think about it. So I asked, honey, did he ever ask you again? Yes, Dad. The entire time I was in Young Women's. Did you ever lie? Yeah, Dad. I started lying just like all the other girls. So that launched me on. This happened to my own children. Found out it happened to 4 of my 6 children. And fortunately, the oldest one, I was the bishop for the most of the time she was in Young Women's. Yeah, I was irate about this, knew this was wrong. That launched me on this campaign. Maybe it was good to home teach Mr. Intimidation for a while so I could get some of that gumption to protect my kid like he did.
Yeah, or even the very idea that this might be going on behind your back.
And then the crusher question my wife asked her in this first discussion, she asked, Well, honey, why didn't you ever tell us that you were being asked this? Her answer, I thought you all knew what was being asked in the bishop's office. No, we didn't know. We should have known. Okay, so that's what launched me on this whole thing.
What did you do, Sam? You okay? You need a minute?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Okay, well,
good.
what did you do with this anger?
Well, first thing, go to the church. This is obvious. Everybody in the world now knows you don't take a child behind a closed door. We just had all this Catholic scandal stuff. Nobody knew about the Boy Scouts yet. But we know it's wrong. And to ask kids questions on this podcast right here, it would be super inappropriate for me to say the questions that are so inappropriate. Do you masturbate? That's a horrendous question to be asking. But the other questions that are being asked, oh my gosh, yeah, these are being asked to kids. We know that's wrong. So I'm going to go talk to the stake president and say, we need to start doing something so this isn't happening. We can start in our wards, we can start in our stake, but really we need to go to the church and get this changed because it's wrong. So that was the second major topic I was starting to meet with the president about. And I met with him numerous times, but that wasn't working. Finally says, can we contact the general authorities on this? Well, you can write a letter if you want. Well, except they send those back. I can't write a letter. They've already said that. They're just going to send it back. So I wrote an email. I wrote two letters in email, and he supposedly sent them off to the general authorities.
Sam, can I break in for just a second?
Please break in a whole bunch.
Am I to understand from what you're saying is that your stake president was unwilling to direct the bishops under him to avoid those kinds of questions in interviews?
Well, correct. He actually said at one point in time, because I had several interviews with him, said at one time that these questions are not being asked in our stake. I think, well, how do you know that? Have you asked the stake presidents if they have asked girls if they masturbate and asked those girls, do they masturbate over or under their panties? I want to swear so bad that there are girls that are asked those questions. Okay, most bishops are good, but that's a perverted question to be asking, along with a whole bunch of other ones. Anyway, he said, no, we don't ask those questions. I know they ask about masturbation, but, it's hard to sit there and be super confrontational. But anyway, the thing was, eventually, no, we're not going to change this policy. It shouldn't be changed. Confession is a part of a part of repentance. And he pulled out the scriptures and showed, here are the steps of repentance. I said, confession. It doesn't say go confess to the bishop. It says confession. You can confess to God, for heaven's sakes. And it certainly doesn't say, as one of the steps, interrogation. Where's interrogation in this thing? Because that's what that's what has happened to tens of thousands of kids. They were interrogated in ways that harmed them the rest of their life. Okay, so there's your answer to that question.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. So it didn't work out with the stake president. And then he says you can email or write the GA. Of course, that's going to come right back to the stake president and to you because it's a closed loop. You're not able to actually talk to the leaders of the church, or can you? What happened next?
So next was, and by the way, none of this was planned out. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. It was just sitting and thinking, what can I do to raise awareness to this? Well, petitions have worked in some cases, maybe not with the church, but in other things, you hear about petitions all the time. So started a petition. And we ended up I formed a petition. Some of my supporters formed another one, ended up having about 60,000 signatures on that petition, and thousands of people shared their stories on the petition. So the petition is growing and growing, but I didn't feel like that was a good thing. But now we've got the petition. What do we do with it? What do we do with the petition? And during this time, I was contacted. I think somebody contacted the New York Times about what we were doing. And I got a call from a New York Times reporter. And I thought, great, this will raise some awareness to this issue big time. But he wanted some stuff I couldn't produce. Like he asked, how can you prove that you were a bishop? Oh, wow. Well, they gave me a little card, a ministerial card says I'm a bishop. I couldn't find that. And then he asked, can you show me where I can read the stories? Well, I had put stories on my blog. Well, that's difficult to say, okay, reporter, go read my blog. There's about 20 blogs that have stories. Well, okay, so that's uncomfortable. And then I had a bunch of stories on Facebook in my private Facebook stuff, which I'm not sure I want to share those things. The other ones I've got permission to share. Okay, but then that was dead. He didn't call me back. Yeah, I think we talked twice, but at that point I decided, okay, I want to be ready next time. I want to have stories. Okay, I've heard many, many stories, but let's see if we can share these questions or find a way to share these stories. So started the website and we started collecting stories.
Very good. So you've got stories collected, and I know this is going to become very important as the story progresses, even though as of this time, you don't know what you're going to end up using those for and doing with them.
Right. And I didn't understand the process of collecting the stories. And by the way, I'm a little emotional about this because I've read thousands of horror stories, and these are real people that were harmed as children that are trying to heal. And this was a healing process, just being able to share it. But it was hard to get the ball rolling. So here's some objections I had why people weren't sharing stories initially. Number one, I'm a bishop. They're going to share their horror story with another bishop. They've already had such a awful experience with the bishop that's caused many consequences, bad consequences in their life. And now I'm asking him, hey, share with another bishop. That took a little bit to get past it. The next one was trying to get past a trust issue. These are very tender stories. People are opening up their hearts and their minds and the trauma. Anyway, they're tender stories to write and share. And so people were concerned about their confidentiality. Okay. So initially it was, well, on the form, I kept changing the form they would submit their story on, and all this is electronic, and making it more, okay, you don't need to give me your name, but I got to have an email. Okay, you don't need to give me an email, you need to give me your name. And so people started to share, but it was still slow. They were starting to share, but there were still people who say, I want to share my story, but I don't want my name. I can't have my name or email or anything associated with it. And so finally said, okay, if you want to share your name, email, tell me if you want me to share your first name or your last name, or if you want to share nothing and you'll submit the story without your email, I don't even know who you are. Fine. And so I had to make some adjustments to the confidentiality thing to get people to trust. Now, the vast majority of people still sent identifying information. They gained trust as they saw what I was doing.
But because of the concerns of some, you permitted absolute confidentiality without their giving you any information about them.
Yeah. And that could come back to bite you in that people could be falsifying stories. And sure enough, somebody did.
Somebody named Anne?
Pardon? No, that's not Anne.
Oh, that's not anonymous?
No, anonymous is another thing.
Okay.
A good thing.
Tell us about this thing.
Okay. So somebody submitted a story. And by the way, it was a grueling, I don't even want to use that word because it was a kind of like grueling, but it was a difficult process to read all the stories. To maintain them confidential, I'm not letting anybody else read, edit, classify, and then post on the website because I've said, I'm not going to let anybody see this. Okay. They're not going to see your name, email, nothing. So I read thousands of stories and edited thousands of stories.
What was a day like for Sam Young back then after you got home from work?
I would read for hours the stories. I would talk for hours with people that wanted to talk with me rather than just put it on the internet. Or they had put it on the internet and still wanted to talk to me. So it was massive time with people that were that we were trying to prevent children from being in their position, people that were still traumatized by this experience and trying to deal with. And here's an opportunity to, I mean, I heard so many times people say, you know what? I've not shared this story ever. I need to. It's healing to be able to write it out. It's healing to be able to talk about it rather than just keep it sealed away in my heart. So I view these stories as sacred stories. I had a sacred trust. Okay, so I spent a lot of time with the stories. Now, this story that was
Sam, I expect our audience is having a similar response to the one that you're having and that we're all having. But when you were putting these stories out, were there people in the church who were having a different reaction to these stories?
Yeah, there were people that said, "No, that doesn't happen. You're all making this up." So somebody made up a story and posted it totally anonymously. I didn't know about this. No, I'd read the story and posted it and thought, geez, well, I feel bad about that person, really bad about that person. But anyway, I started getting feedback from friends that you have a story that is fake and it was made up to prove that your stories are fake. And they gave me the number of the story, and I looked at it and says, well, geez, that's a really traumatic, sad story. It fits in with what's happened to a lot of kids. And so initially I didn't want to believe that it was fake. And then eventually I was sent some screenshots of where these people were really making fun of, you know, look, he public. We wrote this. We made this whole thing up. So I did take the story down. But that's
so their idea is that because they can get a fake story past you, that it means they're all fake.
Exactly. Yep. I think that's what they were saying.
Yeah, Bill.
Can I just say that if we apply that same logic to the stories in the church with Paul H. Dunn and President Nelson's flight of death and the experience in Mozambique and the lady with the red hat and Elder Holland's double-digit state creation every week of our, if we apply the same logic, then everything in the church would be BS. And certainly the same person wouldn't want us to apply that standard there.
And not to mention the Kinderhook plates, same stunt there.
Yeah.
What did this do, this prank? What did this do? Anything lasting?
No, not really. It was a minor incident that was forgotten pretty quick. I mean, those guys, they may have gotten a big kick out of it. They may have been able to tell all their friends, look, the stories were fake. But in reality, it was a thing for maybe a week.
Yeah. That's just crazy what some people will do in order to disprove something that they don't want to hear.
Well, I don't know who is, if you have very many people watching this or who's going to be watching in the future, but I just want to say this. If you shared a story, thank you. That was not only helping you, but helping a ton of other people that read your story. So thank you for those who shared. And I've got to say this too, those who didn't share and are still keeping that story inside, you don't feel like you can share it yet. I get that. I understand that. That's okay. We know of you. You're unseen but seen and known about. And if you don't feel like you can share your story yet, fine. Hopefully that's a good thing. You do it when you feel comfortable that you can do it. But stay safe and just know that we support and love you. Okay.
Can I say one more thing, which is that one would only need to go on to Floodlit see all of the leaders in the LDS Church, bishops, mission presidents, stake presidents, who have done horrific things, much worse than asking a question of sexual nature, to know that things of a lesser charge, hence asking questions of a sexual nature, surely does happen. It would be absurd to say that doesn't happen, but bishops molest kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Good point. All right. So December 2017, you started the protectldschildren.com blog to collect and share testimonies from other members who felt harmed by the interview process. And we talked about the confidentiality. I think we're ready to go to the next slide if you are, Sam.
Sure.
Okay. Major advocacy milestones. Hey, Randall Bell, can you read these? And we'll tick them off and then let it's just more helpful to me to see them sort of in context chronologically and then hear Sam talk about them. I can keep them in my head better. So could you just read through all of those?
Sure. Major advocacy milestones in 2018. January 2018 announced the March for the Children to bring his concerns directly to the church headquarters. March 2018 led a march of roughly 1,000 supporters through Salt Lake City to deliver 3,000 petition signatures and books of survivor stories to church leaders. And I was there, and they were thick books.
And those were the collection of the stories printed out 15 times for each of the apostles.
Yeah, they were on a big carts. I mean, there they are. March 2018 policy change. The LDS Church updated its guidelines allowing youth to invite a parent or another adult to interviews. And I'll just interject. That seemed very strange to me. Why are you giving kids permission? Why not give everybody permission, including the parents permission? So that's just kind of wacky to me. But anyway, Young argued the change was insufficient because it was optional, not mandatory. And then Sam hit big international media with the BBC interview.
Let me show this right there for a second, because I was not aware of this until Sam had pointed it out to me, or I'd forgotten. Do you recognize this young-looking Tommy? Do you recognize Peter Bleakley? I did a screen grab because I know the BBC is really hot. You know, they're quick on the trigger with the trademark strike. So I just did a screen grab. This was June 30th, 2018. That's what the code is in the upper left-hand corner. Yeah, he was on this show on the BBC Protect LDS Children, Mormon Church's intrusive interviews. So yeah, that was this was really getting legs. For those of you who may not remember or may not have known that this was going on, yeah, this was a huge deal. And then the final one, Randy?
Yeah, July through August 2018 conducted a 23-day hunger strike in Salt Lake City. And I'll interject to say it was right smack in front of the church office building to demand a total ban on one-on-one interviews and sexually explicit questions, and almost met an apostle. I don't know about that part, Sam. Maybe you can tell us which apostle you almost met.
That was my prompt, but I tell you what, my initial thought is to save this until it arrives chronologically.
Yeah.
But the second thought follows fast upon it, which is I will forget, almost certainly.
No, we'll get there.
Okay, you're going to remember that? Everybody remind me and Sam about this almost meeting an apostle. It's an incredible story. I was flabbergasted. So there's
So let's go back.
This is from March, I think, of 2018. You led the march of roughly 1,000 supporters through Salt Lake City to deliver, and you went from where to where?
Went from the city county building to the church offices.
Okay.
They closed off all the roads for us. It was so cool. Initially, when I had no idea, I was worried, are people going to show up for this? I spent a bunch of money getting all this organization stuff done. Is anybody going to come? Well, it turned out 1,000 people came. It was wonderful. And so they closed off the main thoroughfares and let us have the entire.
I think it was State Street.
It was State Street, yeah.
At Great Street.
Yeah. So the reason I was looking at, once we have the petition, and by the way, it's 60,000 signatures, not 30. And the next step is, what do we do with all these stories? And I'd heard about marches, like the petition. I'd heard about marches. What the heck? Let's do a march. And it turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful event. We had the TV stations marching along our side. So this got massive publicity. And the publicity, that's not what I'm interested in. Publicity means awareness. That's what I'm interested in, is awareness. So it raised awareness to a gigantic degree.
And pressure. Publicity is pressure.
Yes, but the awareness was so high that the church made a change. And that change wasn't, if the kid asks, then you can have the interview, and said nothing about the explicit questions. Mm-hmm. But even though that was the change, that's not the message that the world got, or the members got. They got this message, which was the headline: church now allows second person in the interview. Okay. That gave the green light. It didn't say anything about kids. Mm-hmm. It said another person can be in that interview. So it gave the red light or the green light to concerned parents, like my imposing friend, or just people that care about their kids. It gave them the green light. Oh, by golly, my kid's not going there anymore. I'm not going to allow sexually explicit questions. So the awareness was wonderful, because nobody reads most people don't read the entire paper. They read that headline. They're certainly not going to go read the policy manual of the church. Mm-hmm. So bishops got this message too. By golly, I don't want to do that anymore. I want somebody else to be in this meeting. So yeah, it was a good thing. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. We have a clip from a news report from that march when you're at the church office building, I believe it is. And apparently somebody comes out and says, don't touch this. And it's not MC Hammer, or is that can't touch this? Anyway, can we play this? Referring to the building, by the way, don't touch this building.
We are going to go ahead.
Speak up. Can't hear.
See, I can lip read. And you said he said that?
Okay, good.
So it's difficult to hear, but do you recollect that moment, and can you describe what happened?
So first of all, we brought 15 books of these stories, addressed each one of the 15 apostles. And they sent to greet us a woman with public affairs. Okay, well, fine. We were hoping it was going to be somebody that had authority, some man, general authority. Well, that's not what they gave us. It was kind of a slap in the face, but that's okay. Hey, this is a great event. And I had folks that had been abused, had them had 15 what I called ambassadors, and they each gave a book to their public affairs representative and said a few words about it. Then the next one, then the next one. It was a wonderful experience. And then the public affairs lady interrupted it, and she said, could you make an announcement? When she first said the announcement, I thought, what does that have to do? The announcement was, could you announce to your followers, yes, don't touch the building. It wasn't, could you please avoid touching the building? Don't touch the building. Don't touch the building. We're here because we don't want you to touch our kids. And you're concerned about this building right here, that somebody touches it. My guess is somebody leaned against him. Who knows what it was, but it was probably
Delin. He leans everywhere he goes. You know that. But the thing is this, I love the story because it so beautifully illustrates in thumbnail version the attitude of the church to its members versus the church itself. And by church, I mean not the members, right? They're much more interested in the church as building and investments than they are in the actual members.
Yep. It was a revealing moment.
Any thoughts from you, Bill or Randy, about that story?
Well, I think people need to be reminded that this was a historical moment. This is a big deal because think about it. There had been marches before across the U.S. on the behalf of labor rights, women's rights, civil rights, gay rights. This was the first march for kids who are the most vulnerable in society. And Sam really captured my attention, and he really made history that day with the first march of its type in a major U.S. city. So Sam's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
And getting bigger with every meal.
Please don't interrupt the applause, Sam.
Oh, that
Never
was-
step on the applause. That's my advice to you.
The
All
only
right. Well, all the stuff that you're doing, and oh, Bill, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to put this up on the screen and just make a comment here. This is the letter from 1982, Spencer W. Kimball, where he is talking about the interview process and states that oral sex is an unnatural and unholy practice, for instance. And when they gave this letter out, if you'll notice the second thing there, it says, when interviewing married persons, the one doing the interviewing should scrupulously avoid indelicate inquiries which may be offensive to the sensibilities of those being interviewed. And then it goes on to name the rule, right? What's funny, RFM?
I'm sorry. I just the idea that you're not supposed to make indelicate inquiries while you're making sure that the priesthood holders aren't getting blowjobs.
Right. And LDS leaders can say all they want that, we've been very, we've told people not to delve too deeply, not to ask too specific questions. And I'm not even sure they did that. But if you want to claim that they did that, here's an instance where you give the priesthood leaders direction and they are, because they're lay persons, because they're normal human beings who have different propensities and degrees of unhealthiness and different degrees of ego, a bunch of them, not just a couple, a bunch of them went against what the first presidency said and went ahead and started asking people in bishop interviews, naming the thing, asking people if they did it. And here we have children who are getting asked questions by bishops. So even if the church wants to say, we've instructed our leaders not to ask those things, the reason you need two adults in the room is because even if the church did teach that, and again, I'm skeptical that they did. Even if they did teach that, we can't trust grown men who lead in the church to always follow the rules. And again, these are adults on this image here. It's the children that he's trying to protect. By the way, kudos to you, Sam. It's the children he's trying to protect. If grown men as lay leaders in the church can't follow the instructions when they're spelled out, maybe, brethren, we just need two adults in the room. So there's an extra person there to make sure that somebody doesn't go off the rails and start asking the things that traumatize children.
Yeah.
Very good.
I just want to add, that's a great insight, Bill. I remember those days. Spencer W. Kimball was a big deal, who wrote that letter. My mom, who, by the way, is still with us and she's 103, was and is very devoted to the Mormon Church. And she was a stake release Sunday president. The stake president, she was mortified, asked her in one of these interviews if she was involved in bestiality. I mean, she was just absolutely shocked. Where the fuck did that come from? These guys have no training. They have no class. They have no morals or ethics or logic. Just write it all off. They just run off at the mouth with anything they want to say, no matter how foul and offensive and disgusting.
Thank you, Randy. So Sam, you're out there, you're giving the church a black eye right and left. Did the church take notice?
Well, they took notice and made that change, which.
And then, yes. And then what happened?
Okay. So I'm looking at, they haven't gone far enough. Certainly we can get the rest of that. And I didn't, so I'm cogitating on what I should do, what else I could do. And we've heard of Gandhi, who did did fast. He did 2 21-day fasts. He did some shorter fasts, but 2 21-day fasts. And the world knows that. And that accomplished some stuff against a gigantic empire, powerful empire. So what the heck? Let me try a fast. Now, after the march, I talked to my wife a little bit about that. And she said, absolutely not. I think she was afraid of my health. You're not going to fast 21 days. So I kept cogitating on it. And finally, so this would have been April that I told her about it. April, May, June, July. So in July or early July, I decided, I'm going to do a fast. I can't think of anything else. We're going to do a fast. I'm going to do a fast. So a month, I talked to a doctor who I'd become friends with through Protect the Children and asked him about, I want to do a 23-day fast or 21-day fast. How should I prepare for that? What concerns? Well, so he gave me some things to do, and I started that 1 month. I scheduled when I was going to do the fast and scheduled and started doing my prep a month in advance. Well, initially it looked like I was on a diet. Well, I was on a diet. And so I started to lose some weight. My family's excited. My wife, wow, that's great. Well, 1 week, and I'm talking about something I'm going to do. I'm trying to kind of market this, that I'm coming to Salt Lake City. I'm going to be doing something the church has never faced. Okay. This is going to raise a lot of awareness. It's going to put some pressure. I didn't know if it was, but that's what I was saying, that something big is coming up on such and such a date. So a week before that date, I've said 1 more week of prep. I've now lost 10 pounds. And then I felt like I can't just do this without telling my wife. So I sat down with her and I told her, because she didn't know what I was going to do yet either. And I told her I was planning on doing a 3-week fast. She was adamant. There's no way. You are not going to do that, Sam. You cannot. And I was, this was not a confrontational thing. It was, we're discussing it.
How old were you at the time?
Let's see, 2018, 66.
That factored into her concerns, didn't it?
Well, probably did. So, and good for her for being concerned about the health of her husband. But I kept being insistent so finally she asked the question, Sam, tell me the real reason. What is deep down inside of you? Why you're insistent on doing this? And I shared 2 things. First, we all have some kind of inclination, some kind of thing that our mind is focused on, though we don't know it's focused during our life. But anytime we went to see a movie where, like Saving Private Ryan, where there was a noble cause, war, a lot of times that would be the case, but looking at these noble causes, and I had told my wife, I'd love to be involved in some kind of noble cause, but I think I'm past that at 66. And I didn't say that, but I thought it was past that. But I told her, that we see these movies and I talk about a noble cause. This. How could you come up with a more noble cause than standing up to protect children? This is a noble cause. That opportunity will likely never come again. The stage is set for a noble cause to stand up for these children. That was number 1. And then I said the second one, and honey, you've told me this. You told me that Jesus Christ is directing what I'm doing. And I told her the second reason is I respect the teachings. I respect the example of Jesus Christ. This is my fully embracing my beliefs there. Her heart was touched. We were crying. And she said, okay, it's okay to do that. Okay. So that is what happened before the march. Now, come on, RFM, you not let me just keep talking. There has to be something so I don't just run off the mouth here.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Is this a good time for you to bring up the story about the almost apostle meeting?
Great question.
Yeah, because this is huge. Everything that he's talking about is huge, but this may be a first to be disclosed.
So I had made two outreaches to apostles or general authorities. The first one was writing those letters. We didn't get any response to them. The second one, I had started having press conferences, and I was going to have a press conference in January of 2018 here in Houston to talk about the issue, talk about the march that was coming up. And I called my friend Gifford Nelson and said, Giff, I'm going to have actually, I'd called the church, and I didn't even tell you this. I'd called the church public affairs because I wanted to alert them. I'm going to have this. I'm on your side. I like the church. Let's change the church. I'm going to go talk about this, but I want to give you a heads up so that you can have somebody there with me, a representative. Well, weird things happened on that call. It was like I was talking to a secret agent or something. And when I first told the person that answered the call, they said, well, let us get somebody to talk to you about this. They went and got somebody. He came, or he said, I'm going to call you back. He called me back. And it was some weird, it may have even been blocked because it's just a weird, where's this coming from? I answered it. And he said, our conversation, you cannot share a conversation with this anywhere. Your movement, I agree with. And I said some other things, but basically was, you cannot tell anybody we had this phone call. Well, that's weird.
Who was
Anyway,
it?
somebody I called the public affairs because that was my first thing to say. Somebody come with me on this press conference. It
So
may
you
have,
have no idea who this was talking to you and telling you this?
pardon?
Do you have any idea who this was talking to you and telling you this?
He said his name was Tom. I think I blogged about this because it was so weird. Him saying,
Wasn't it Tom Monson?
not Tom Monson.
No.
Tom Monson was, well, no, it wasn't. So anyway, I said I'd like to have somebody, and he may have thrown out, well, I know Gifford Nelson. Should I call him? And I think he may have said, yeah, you can call. You might want to call Giff. But it was a really weird call. So I then called Gifford Nelson to tell him I'm having this press conference and this is what I'm going to be talking about. Come be on it with me or send some representative with it. So, you can have, I'm not against you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he tried to talk me out of this press conference I was going to have. And he said, Sam, I said, I've never asked these questions. I've never asked about masturbation. I know, and I've never asked about masturbation either. None of our bishops ask about masturbation. Nobody asks about masturbation. And then he lost me. I'm like, geez, okay.
Yes.
Well, he's
Who
not,
the hell asked my daughter?
Yeah. Anyway, so that outreach I had at January, talked to him. Now, so now the fast is about to start. I fly to Utah. I start my fast, but I don't tell anybody what it is yet. I get an outreach from the church, not an apostle, not anything, but a third party, and basically was told that an apostle may be willing to meet with her. I said, hallelujah, yeah, I'm interested in that. But he has a condition, and this is a condition. You have to tell us what you're planning on doing tomorrow. I'm looking at, well, I don't want to tell anybody what I'm doing. I've been keeping that secret and building up to it. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to tell the church what I'm going to do. Who knows? Maybe they'll block access to the around 10. Who knows? But I didn't. But to get an interview with the apostle, I was very interested in that. So against my better judgment, I said, Here's what I plan to do tomorrow. He thanked me. I never heard back from him. A few hours later, I get a call from Gifford Nelson, my friend, so if you don't know Gifford Nelson, he was a professional football player for the Houston Oilers, a member of the church, good member of the church. He was my bishop at one time. He was then my stake president, called me into the High Council for the second time. I served with him until I got to the number one spot on the High Council. So I knew Gifford pretty well.
And a 70 at this time.
Pardon? And he's a 70. That's right. So now he is a general authority. So he gives me a call, and he's trying to talk me out of doing the fast. And he throws out some things like, rather than meeting with an apostle, how about we provide you with a letter that's signed by the apostles that they are working on this issue? I thought,
that sounds like a big load of nothing.
Exactly. So you're going to give me a letter that says nothing and that means nothing, and to get me to quit raising it, because I'm hoping we're going to raise a lot of awareness. So he said that, and then I start talking. Basically, it was okay. I started talking to him about GIF. You care about kids, right? Yes, of course I care. Yeah, and the kids are being asked all these questions. To protect the kids, why don't you and I, since you've got the same concerns I've got, you and me, go talk to the apostles? So I made that offer 2 or 3 times. Nothing went anywhere. So I didn't get the interview with the apostle, but I was not going to be forestalled from moving to the next action.
Couple of questions, Sam. The apostle was M. Russell Ballard, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
And that's the person that you don't know who this person on the phone was in this first phone call to you?
Well, and that phone call had been like 7-8 months previous to this. That phone call was before the march.
Okay. But the person wanted to know what you were going to be doing when you were fasting that summer.
Correct. And he said, if you tell me, you can get the interview with the
Okay, that person, you don't know who it was?
No, I don't even have a name.
Okay. But
wait. You know what?
What?
I do know who it is.
Who was it?
But I'm not going to share that. This is a friend of a friend of a friend. And I committed to maintain
That close.
Yeah. Well, I know him, but it's one of those confidentiality things. I said, no, I'm not going to.
Okay, but you know who this person is, right?
I do.
And they are in a position that they would be able to do what it was that they were telling you they were going to do.
Well, I think so. He worked in the church office building, knew Elder Ballard very well.
So this friend of a friend of a friend, whose name you will not mention, lied to your face about getting an interview with M. Russell Ballard. Is that correct?
No, he wasn't lying. He was being lied to.
I see.
Is the way.
Okay. Well, did he ever apologize to you?
No, I never talked to him again.
Okay, that might be significant. But regardless, you got played. You got played in the church in order to find out what your plan was and what you were going to be doing PR-wise to make them look bad. They made you an offer that they welched on.
Yep. Now, this was kind of like that fake story that was submitted, that it was kind of a nothing burger.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nothing burger too. It didn't stop anything. We went forward full force.
You know what it makes me think of? And I'm not going to tell the story because I've already told it, but this makes me think of, what was it? Timothy Dykes, the head of the SCMC, asking me to confirm my real identity so that I could then be able to have access to look at my SCMC file. Yeah, I didn't believe it when he said it. And now I have even more reason not to believe it.
So he didn't want you to see it?
I never told him.
Oh, you didn't tell him? Okay.
Yeah. I told him to pound sand.
Right. That wouldn't be the first time they've lied in that way, where they tell you they're going to do something. And I have to wonder too, again, Sam, you've already given them the answer. And in fact, to some extent, it's the answer that they eventually come up with, which is to allow a second person to be in the room. Now it's upon request instead of mandatory. But now knowing what the apostolic charge is from Hugh B. Brown, I'm in my head knowing that somebody in the room is suggesting that we have 2 adults in the room. Sam Young is fighting for this. The conversation's happening because they want to admit to you that they're working on it. And so behind the scenes, 15 men, 12 men, 3 men, they're sitting and they're talking about it. And it's obvious that somebody brought it up and encouraged the conversation. So there's at least one of the 15 who says, we should do this. But there's also holdouts, and the holdouts are the majority that on any given day, they can't make the decision to make the change. And so somebody in the room is also, by the way, more than half are in the room going, we can't do that. We shouldn't do that. Let's stop. Let's slow down. Why would we do that? It's just cut and dry. Once you're told there should be 2 people in the room because lots of abuse happens, you go, oh, like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. They're kids. We want to protect them. You have 2 people in the room. I'd like to know what apostles, which of the brethren didn't want 2 adults in the room? And the agreement in the end was like, let's both give up something. How about if we make it so that they have to request it? Oh, okay. Then 2 more guys come on board, and now they make the change. But it takes forever. And it takes compromising just the healthiest standard to get enough people to go, let's do something.
Yeah.
So you said thanks, but no thanks, and you went ahead with your fast. What was that like? And tell us about it, please.
It was so delightful. I'd never fasted like that before, that many days. And so part of what I was told is, you're not going to have energy, so you need to conserve energy. Well, what fasting does to you, you got tons of energy. Your mind is clearer than ever. You can think super clear. You have kind of a feeling of everything's okay. It's kind of a euphoria. So it's just a joyful feeling that comes along with a longer term fast. So I had that. That was great. So I kind of quit doing, in fact, early on, I was conserving my energy. So I'd go out. I'm not going to be walking around the block. After a while it is, no, I'm going to go walk around.
Well, it's the middle of summer in downtown Salt Lake City.
Uh-huh. Yep.
That sounds hot.
Yeah, it was hot. But okay, so but the cool things about it, I did a FaceTime thing every night, and so like I can't remember 6 or 7 at night. So we had people come down there. I did open mic. If you want to talk about your abuse, how you feel about things, how you feel about changes, whatever, you get to talk about things. So I'd usually bring some kind of topic. But we also did something else that really worked. Well, it didn't work. It worked well for a hook for interest. And that was every day, 15 of I ended up fasting 23 days, 15 of those days, I set out a chair and invited an apostle to come join us, come meet the members of the church.
By name.
That's right. So every day it was the lowest apostle or the newest apostle first. And then we moved up the rung until we finally got to the eldest apostle, which was the president of the church, President Nelson. So we put that chair out there. We invited them to come. But you would think maybe they would come. There were, over the course of that 23 days, there were over 500,000 watches of that broadcast. So you were reaching a bunch of people, and there are people right here that you could minister to. I'm ministering to them, but I'm just some guy. You're somebody that has status in their eyes that would make a difference. Well, we didn't have anybody show up.
I think one of the things that made you so attractive, by the way, I hope that's not a huge letdown for everybody, because nobody showed up. Nobody came over and took a seat at all to talk to Sam at all. And this was hugely embarrassing for the church and incredibly effectively done, if I may say so myself. And when you tell me that you're starting with the lowest apostle and moving it on up, that strikes me as carefully planned as well. Because if you start at the top and the president doesn't show up, you know nobody else is going to be able to show up after him. So, of course, you start at the bottom and work your way up, like Audie Murphy shooting the charging Nazi soldiers from the back to the front. Right? So you get them all.
Well, I was actually hopeful. In my naivete, I actually thought, you know what? We just had this big march, all this gigantic awareness. It's been all over the papers, all over the TV stations. I think somebody's going to show up. So every single day, my hope started to dim as we went along, but I really did naively thought, there's going to be one of these guys that, yes, is concerned about all these kids that they've harmed.
There's something they're more concerned about.
Yes.
Looking bad.
Well, they accomplished that. They're cowards. Half the building, if you know how the administration building is done, there's apostles in every corner. There's 16. It's I think it's 3 stories times 4 corners. Anyway, no, it's 4 stories times 4 is 16. One of them is a conference room, and the rest of them are apostle offices. So they had a direct line of sight to you, Sam. You're right across the street. And for them to not show up and stay behind their 5 layers of security, U.S., as I said the other night, USDA choice certified cowards.
It was incredible what you did, but what you're doing from their point of view is you're making the church look bad. You're embarrassing the church. You're embarrassing them. And what they're asking themselves every day during your fast is, why isn't this voodoo doll working? They're trying to, they're trying to do something. They can't do anything. They're powerless. They don't realize that coming out to you, they see that as bending the knee. I'm sorry, Bill?
No, I was raising my hand to the square because poking the voodoo doll, these men have the priesthood. If they wanted to mute you, Sam, they could have if they had priesthood power. And I'll say, RFM, you're right. Sam had to embarrass them to make them change something. They don't like to be embarrassed in front of the world. They don't like to see newspaper articles written that make them look like they're just bumbling idiots or bad people. And that's when they'll make the changes, when you do that kind of thing to them.
Did you ever think about how much you were embarrassing them while you were doing it?
Well, people told me I was embarrassing the church. And so that was in my mind, but that wasn't a focus at all. The focus was, what can we do to raise awareness? So these chairs, if that's embarrassing, I don't care. It raises awareness. People are going to watch this for that. And so the more people that watch this, the more people that are not going to let their children go behind closed doors, the more people are not going to the more people that are going to protect their children. So that was really not a thing in my mind, but I knew that was a possibility.
All right. Let me see if we can put up this clip. And I believe this is from the correct time period, which is from that first fast or whatever it is. Let's talk about it, okay? This says nearly 200 people protest possible. Oh, this is back where you're about to get excommunicated. So let me take this off the stage. And this goes back to what I was talking about before when I asked you, was the church taking notice of what you were doing? Well, they can't help it because you're across the street and calling them down to sit and talk with you about changing these policies that allow children to be asked all these questions one-on-one behind closed doors. What happened? The apostles didn't come talk to you, but somebody else did and asked you to come to a certain meeting.
Yeah, now that was after the fast, but I want to tell you one other thing about the fast.
I want to hear it.
So this was, every day was wonderful. Okay. But there was one day that really touched my heart, and I thought touched some others. So we're done with the 15 apostles. Not a single one showed up. So what do you do after that? I invited Jesus Christ. I said, I've invited Jesus Christ, and I'm pretty sure he's going to show. The apostles didn't show. I'm pretty sure Jesus Christ is going to show. Jesus has a my favorite parable is the parable of the sheep and the goats, where if you have fed however you've treated people that are vulnerable, marginalized, you're treating, that's the way Jesus views that you treated me like that. You fed me. That was me. That was somebody you didn't know was me, but that was me. And so I'm looking at, well, Jesus has already represented that he's in everybody, especially the marginalized. So I was looking for the marginalized to come. And I sat out this time the chair for Jesus. And I brought water and a basin and invited people to sit in that chair and allow me the privilege, the honor of washing their feet and giving and pronouncing some words of blessing. But I view that as this is the Jesus Christ that I worship. The marginalized children, the marginalized people, the people that have been harmed, I'm going to wash their feet. I'm not Jesus. The ones that need this. And so Jesus did show up. Even the apostles didn't. People that were there to have a little bit of healing to go forward. Okay.
And
so
you are still a bishop at that time.
Well, yeah, of course.
Because once a bishop, you're always a bishop, even if you're not serving in the calling you had, and you're not excommunicated yet.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the other parable in the New Testament about when the rich man goes out to give this feast, and all the wealthy people, the important people, the apostle people say, no, thanks, I'm too busy. I'm doing something else. So he invites all the marginalized people to come, and they all show up, and they have a nice feast. Then everybody else wants to come. Sorry, can't come in. Doors are shut against you. All right. Does anybody want to say anything over there before we get to the disciplinary hearing of Sam Young? Because surely someone who has done these things that he has done must be disciplined. Yes, Randy?
Sam, I don't know if you want to get into this or not, but do you want to say anything about how your personal life, or more specifically your business, was what you were going through to put all this energy into this cause?
Sure. We might want to save the money part, the financial, until after we go through 2019. But I didn't know this. You smart people probably knew this, that when you have highs, it's real highs in experience. It's typical to go down the roller coaster and just feel bad, feel depressed, feel lonely. So I had many of those instances. And initially I was, what the heck is going on? I just had a fantastic day, wonderful day, all these connections. It comes 10 o'clock. Oh, geez. What am I worth? I'm worth nothing. Anyway, and then I found out that is a common thing when you have highs to also have. So I went through a lot of those after the march, the first march. People were having after march parties and invited me. So I went to a couple of them. I got home, or I got to the hotel I was staying on the very bottom level. I was parked at the bottom level, and I stopped and parked. And, I brought my family, so they're upstairs, and the march was so amazing. And I sat there, and I felt like I felt totally worthless. I'm worthless. What I've done means nothing. What am I even here for? I felt horrible. And then I got a call from some guy in Atlanta that I'd been communicating with, that I'd met with. He's an active member, has some questions. But anyway, and we talked through that. But yeah, I did have those ups and downs, especially when I was reading those stories. Okay, so it cost a lot of energy and mind that I didn't anticipate, that we have those things that happen to us.
I'm sorry, I was thinking more about the outline. I apologize. In these last few sentences of yours, Sam, did you say what it was that the person from Atlanta told you? It raised your spirits?
I can't remember. We just kind of talked through it, and I'm sure he says, Sam, that he wasn't at the march.
Yeah.
But he, it was on TV and Facebook. You could see it. And he was just telling me what a great event it was. And I remembered that he was kind of like Randy. Randy is somebody I connected with through this process. Well, this guy, he'd stopped in Houston on business a couple times. I went to the airport. We went to a place close by, and so we just kind of bonded. So it was really a kind of a validating or distracting me from what I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember what he said, but it was good.
Okay, got it. I'm glad you said that. By the way, before we get into this next part, okay, Randy or Bill, do you have anything else that you want to say? Okay, so let's go ahead and take it to the excommunication.
Okay.
And this part is actually, we're going to play this. This is going to be played after the hearing, but before the result was mailed to you. They didn't give you the result at the hearing. They begged off, and then they mailed it to you. And this clip will be a news story between the two. So I'll go ahead and take that. Thank you. So if you can take us up to that, how do you get served? What was that like?
And when I came home, I was looking at, I've now spent 2 years in this. It's cost me a ton of money. I need to get back into my business. I think I'm done. And a week later, 2 of my friends show up on the doorstep with a summons to the disciplinary council, which was held a week or so later. And I was.
What did you feel like when they showed up?
Well, I invited him in. I'm going to see my friends. So I invited him in. I thought this may be that, but I'm done. I'm thinking I've done enough. They're going to leave me alone. When I opened the letter, there is a super disappointment that we can feel. And I'm not sure I can think of 2 times I felt that. That was one, just super disappointment in the church. What the hell? We're trying to protect children here. I've gone through all this. I'm now done. And they want to excommunicate me. Well, they're calling me to an excommunication court. So it's basically, I was really disappointed.
And then what happened? You said it was about a week later.
Yeah. So in that week, you can bring witnesses. They were going to present the evidence for 15 minutes, and then I could present evidence or witnesses for 45 minutes. Okay, well, fine. But they had stipulation on the witnesses. They had to be, I can't remember the exact term.
They have to be members of the church.
Not
right?
just members, but they had to be
temple recommend.
Whatever word they use, I'm looking at. Well, that means you got to have a temple recommend.
Okay.
So you've got to be a faithful member of the church. Well, the folks I was going to ask didn't fit that category, except for one, and this was a big one. So when I came, I had a friend. He was my bishop for a while, then stake president for a while. He went on a mission to Korea, South Korea, 3 years as mission president. He comes home. I gave him a call. I'm involved in my stuff. And so we go to lunch, we talk, and then I share with him what I'm doing. And he said this. He said, this is my first validation from a church leader. He said, Sam, somebody needs to stand up for our children. Good for you. Oh my gosh. I got somebody's support that bishop, stake president, mission president. Well, now the excommunication trial is looming. I can't ask the people I would normally, but I've got an ace up my sleeve.
The mission president.
This guy. And so I start trying to call him. I can't get a hold of him. And then one night about 10 o'clock, I'd been to an anniversary party for a friend, came out, got in my car, and Patty was out of town for something. So I was at home alone. And I finally was able to get this guy at 10 o'clock at night. Well, he was on a trip in Canada, driving someplace. And I told him what I wanted. And what I was looking for is a witness. And the only thing I want a witness for is my character, not to agree with what I'm doing, but that I'm not against the church. I'm not against the leaders. I'm not against the theology. I'm not against the doctrine. I'm not against any of those things. I'm against a policy. Those four things I'm not against. And that's the apostasy stuff. I'm not an apostate because those four things I'm not against. That's all I was interested in. And now I've got a guy that supported what I did anyway. He turned me down. He said, I can't testify.
Your cause is just, but I can do nothing for you.
Yeah, that experience was like a knife being stuck in my heart. The guy that had supported me, at least verbally, the year before,
And privately.
it was like it was a gut punch. So I sat there and felt bad for myself for maybe 10 minutes and finally said out loud, F it, I'm going to a movie. So I went to a late night movie. But
What did you go see?
there was a movie about, it was a docudrama. It was based on history where they went and captured Eichmann, I think, in Australia, or in not Australia, in Argentina.
Argentina.
In Argentina, yeah. So that was the movie. I can't remember the name of it, but I remember what it was about. But what
Okay.
I really remember is what pulled me out of it was F it, saying that out loud.
Yes. If this were Friday, you could say it out loud.
Well,
Let's say it out loud anyway.
Say it out loud anyway?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is a good guy. I felt like I was betrayed. He wasn't betraying. He's got his own family and interests that he needs to protect because he ended up going to work for the church. Maybe he was working for the church. But anyway, I was feeling that I'd been betrayed and feeling bad, feeling sorry for myself, and finally said, fuck it. I'm not worrying about this now. I'm going to the movie.
Good for you. But still, you had to go to the hearing. You didn't have to go to the hearing. You made the decision to go to your disciplinary hearing.
Correct. I felt like this is a good cause. This is a good defense. I'm not an apostate by the definition of apostasy. And these are all my friends. Well, I walked in there. They were my friends. All of them looked down at the table. They would not make eye contact with me.
So you're in front of the whole High Council. That's 12 people plus the stake presidency, which is 3 more, plus maybe the bishop and the clerk.
The bishop wasn't there. The stake clerk. So there were 16 men in the room.
And none of them would make eye contact with
They
you?
would, and they maybe one or two. I don't remember. I just remember, my gosh, these are my friends. They're looking at the table. I've been on many of these councils. The guy walks in, you want him to feel love, not hate. We can't stand you. I mean, that's what I was feeling.
Well, maybe at least they had the decency to be ashamed of themselves.
Well, maybe that's what it was. They did. So Patty was my only witness. She and my kids wrote her talk or her presentation, which I thought was great to get them involved. And she did great. Now they did start looking at her, which I thought, oh, good. She's got their interest. As soon as she's done and it's my turn, right back to stare at the table. They won't make eye contact with me. But after I started reading some of and my defense was, this is what we're doing. Let me read the stories to you. And so I started reading these horrendous accounts of what had happened. And then I started having people look at me during that. Now it's wrapped up, and generally every single council, they're called courts of love. They're called courts of love because you are trying to help this person through repentance. I've been on a whole bunch of them as a bishop and on the High Council. And when it's over, you get up and you go express your love. You give them a big hug and handshake and whatnot. Okay, it's all over. A really good friend was sitting right next to me. It's all over. We all stand up, and he goes to give me to shake my hand. And the stake president said very firmly, the meeting is over. We're going to dismiss brother and sister Young now. He shut down any expression of, we love you, brother Young, very rapidly.
Sam, what were the charges against you?
Apostasy.
Just apostasy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That might need a bill of particulars, but the church isn't great at observing due process.
Well, it spelled it out in the letter, but it was basically apostasy. And that was one of the things I was saying in there. This isn't apostasy. I'm not against these things. And so the church did make some changes with regards to the child policies. And they also made this change a year later. They changed the definition of apostasy to add if you openly speak out about policy. So it's now 5 things that put you in the apostasy ranks if you oppose policy.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's dangerous if you're speaking against the church's policy to emotionally abuse children. That's a protected policy.
Yeah, somebody in the chat noted that they X'd you, Sam, because you embarrassed them. And then I had a thought. There's an urgency to protecting children. So you ask the church to change, and it doesn't. You plead with the church to change, and it doesn't. You get people to show up and share their stories and say, yeah, like here's the people that got hurt by this, and it still doesn't want to change. Like there's no process in this church whereby a change to protect the least among us, the most vulnerable, there's an urgency to that. In no way do they allow you to tell them that there's an urgency to a change that needs made. They will do this on their time. And I thought to myself right after that, I thought, what kind of church delays obvious steps to protect children? You doing all of that, if eventually the healthy person goes, oh, you're right. I'm the one who's seeing this incorrectly. You're pleading for us to protect children. Like, let's just protect children. How can we make those fucking changes? Like, just protect the kids. And they're like, ooh, no, don't you embarrass us. We'll do this on our own due time, and we may not do it at all.
Well,
Yeah, I think the bottom line is if you're doing something privately and then it gets made public and you're embarrassed because it's made public, maybe you should stop doing it.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, you raised an interesting point about urgency because there were some people encouraged me, Sam, you've done enough. You can slow down. You can wait for a church response. They'll change eventually. And I'm looking at every day that we delay, another child is going to be harmed, period, no matter what. Every single day, somebody's called. I mean, tens of thousands of kids around the church are called in every Sunday. Somebody is going to be harmed. I'm not waiting around. Let's do it now, and we'll protect as many children as we can today. So it was kind of a philosophy that I did have.
Yeah. So you left us where you're being ushered out unceremoniously before even one person can shake your hand from the High Council. What happens next?
Well, I got to walk out into to all my new friends because there had been, I don't know, a couple hundred people that had gathered at the church, outside of the church.
And John DeLynn was one of those. He kind of led that.
John DeLynn was there. Yeah, John DeLynn was so helpful in this whole process in raising awareness. I was on, I don't know, several of his podcasts. He marched with us both times. So yeah, John, I really appreciate John supporting this thing big time.
In the clip we have to play between your council and you're getting the result, there's a clip within the clip of that meeting outside where you're speaking and there's all those people around you. So let's go ahead and play this, okay? By the way, was there anything else you wanted to tell us that happened that night?
Well, now our time is running out here, has run out. Do you want me to share more stuff?
Yes, please.
Okay, so they had security. They had the parking lots all blocked off, and they would not let anybody in the building except me and my wife. Well, the time came, they summoned us to walk in. Well, my mom, let's see, like 87 years old, she had flown all the way down here for that too. And so she's a little frail, and she needed to go to the bathroom. So I said, fine, Mom, just come with us. It's time to go in. Patty goes in. I am holding the door open for my mom, And they start to close the door and said, no, she can't come in. She can't come in. I'm looking at, what? She needs to use the bathroom. She cannot come in. I grabbed the door and pulled the open and said, she is coming in. It was anyway, just one of those screwy things. We're supposed to be Christ-like. How Christ-like is that? Anyway, she did get to go in and use the bathroom.
Thanks to her son. Okay, let's play this clip and see what we can find in this, because this is a matter of news. Even news in Utah, news in Houston, and other places as well.
In downtown Salt Lake City, hundreds protested against possible disciplinary action by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints against Sam Young. He's the Texas man who started a group called Protect LDS Children and now faces possible excommunication. News 4 Utah's Rosie Nguyen was at the event and joins us with the message these protesters want heard. Rosie?
Rick, organizers of the protest by Temple Square say theirs was just one of several that took place across the country. They say they are current and former members of the church, and they will stand alongside Sam Young until something is done to protect children during ecclesiastical interviews. As former LDS Bishop Sam Young met with the Church Disciplinary Council in Houston, Texas today, nearly 200 people protested the possibility of his excommunication near Temple Square. During his 23-day hunger strike back in July, Young said he wanted one-on-one interviews between bishops and children and the sometimes sexually explicit questions to end.
What caused my gears to engage in my brain and say that was wrong for my children. It's sure as heck wrong when you go to the lengths that it's wrong for everybody.
One of the protesters in attendance, Crystal Legionnaire, says Young's cause hits close to home because of the trauma and shame she experienced from her interviews. She says the church's response has been disappointing.
I think it shows that they are more willing to protect predators than they are to protect Sam.
Legionnaire says no matter the outcome of Young's status in the church, he and his supporters won't stop until children in the church are better protected.
There's so much fire to this flame and too many individuals are standing behind it that it's about standing with us and recognizing the change may be hard, the change may be uncomfortable, but it is a necessary change.
The Disciplinary Council did not come to a decision today regarding Young's status in the church. After the protest, organizers held a candlelight vigil for survivors of sexual abuse and those whose lives have been affected by their interviews. Rick, back to you.
Thank you, Rosie.
Okay, before I get your comments, I want to tell you that one of my very favorite things about tonight's show is that Sam Young did not know until today that when he was going through his proceeding and having all those great people show up in Houston, which was absolutely wonderful, but he did not know that this protest was going on in Salt Lake City at the same time. How did that make you feel, Sam?
Well, it makes me feel super supported. I had heard that there were some folks gathering, but I had never seen this before. I'd never seen this news clip.
All right. Any comments from either of you? And then we're going to go to the clip, because then the letter arrives with the decision from the stake president, which you open in Salt Lake City. But any comments before then?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was going to say, this is how hard you have to hit them. This is how hard you have to embarrass them before they make the right change, right? You go back to other issues, ending polygamy, treating people of color with some level of equality, forcing them to remove the November 15 policy, 3.5 years. You have to embarrass them to that degree before they'll make the healthy change.
Yeah. And Sam, I just wanted to ask you a question. Do you want to explain why you're wearing a black shirt in some of those shots? Because I know the story, and I think it gives us a little insight of how you work.
Okay, why I wore a black shirt? I actually looked for my black shirt, but I guess it got too faded and all that stuff. I don't have a black shirt anymore. Okay, while I was a believing member, a guy started attending priesthood. He was the elders, I was high priest, but I saw him wearing a black shirt, no tie, and usually sitting alone. And I went over and introduced myself. We talked for a minute, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to make this guy feel comfortable wearing a black shirt. I'd never worn a black shirt to church before. So I went out and bought a black shirt, and that's what I wore Sundays and sat next to him. It kind of bonded us together a little bit. So I'm looking at, I want him to feel comfortable here. He's got a friend that's willing to wear a black shirt. Now, then my faith started to change. And one day I was sitting in church, and during what's it called? Fast and testimony meeting, somebody got up and said, I'm so proud of my husband for this and this. And I'm so proud that he always wears a white shirt that symbolizes purity. I'm sitting there. I got several texts from people in the congregation because they know what I'm doing. And anyway, I heard that and say, okay, I hate white shirts. They represent purity. I'm not going to come demonstrate that here. I'm demonstrating I got a friend. I'm wearing my black shirt forever. So that's why I wore a black shirt most of the time, even during Protect the Children.
I'm sure that Mormons are not alone in confusing the symbol for the reality.
Yeah. So there's my black shirt. Now, this thing about punching or whatever you said, Bill, made me remember more about the excommunication. So I was done. Once I got the excommunication summons, I'm thinking, they just put in my hands another megaphone. I'm going to take advantage of that. So now I'm putting that all over the place. And then when I got the excommunication, well, there are several reactions, but one of them was, they just gave me another gigantor megaphone. I'm going to Salt Lake City. I'm going to call a news conference and announce it right there. And sure enough, a bunch of people showed up, and all the newspapers and TV folks.
And you're going to open the envelope and reveal for the first time the verdict on Sam Young. Brilliant. Hey, we've got a clip that has that on it too as well. Let's see. Now, this is what happens, of course. I think we all know. Spoiler alert. Sam Young gets excommunicated. And here is the clip. And is that that's a black shirt, is it?
Yep.
Got it.
All right, here it is.
A former bishop from Sugar Land says he's been excommunicated from the Mormon Church. The decision came down today after his fight to stop private meetings between bishops and children in the church. Stephanie Whitfield is in Sugar Land to explain.
This started last year when a Sugar Land dad says he found out his daughter had conversations with her bishop that he considers sexually explicit. He's made his fight to stop this practice in the Mormon Church public. And today, church leaders told him he's no longer a member.
We have carefully and prayerfully reviewed this.
Through tears, this former bishop from Sugar Land read a letter sent to him by his church.
The decision of the council that you be excommunicated for conduct contrary to the laws and order of the church.
Excommunication, the result of Sam Young's public plea to stop what he calls sexually explicit interviews of Mormon youth.
Come out of that building right there and come out and demonstrate that you have a strong desire to protect our children.
Young was emotional during a news conference in Salt Lake City. Church leaders, on the other hand, are not talking about the decision. A spokesperson only stating, church discipline is administered by local leaders who are familiar with the individual and his or her circumstances. But the father of 6 says the reason behind the decision is clear.
About that. It was taken only because of my outright public position.
A position he'll continue to fight for, whether he's a member of the Mormon Church or not. The former bishop says he does plan to appeal the church's decision. In Sugar Land, Stephanie Whitfield, KHOU 11 News.
So there's that clip. And in playing that clip of Sam, we seem to have lost Sam. So There he
there
is.
I am.
Sam.
Yes,
Were you able to see that clip?
I saw the clip, but it said I was deleted from the stream, so I was a little worried about that.
Oh, did you do that, Bill? No, he didn't do that.
I was
Randy,
thinking, I've
you're
now been excommunicated from Mormonism Live.
Yeah. No, that's not going to happen. Not going to happen, pal. So, Sam Young, what were your thoughts when you were reading that? The emotion was evident, but you were really, really, once again, giving the old 1-2 punch to the church right across the street and pointing at the temple as you did so.
Well, that was the second time that I have felt this supreme, super disappointment when I read that, because I still had hopes I wasn't going to be excommunicated. The High Council have heard all these horrible stories. Why in the world wouldn't they be? They should be on my side. But so I was still hoping against hope. So it was a super big disappointment.
Well, what happened after that, even that day?
Well, I had a lot of support. People took me out to eat, and anyway, it was a good thing, or it was a good experience with the supporters that showed up there.
It's almost as if you made. I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say people had a lot of gratitude for you and wanted to honor what you had done to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, there's one thing about winning an argument. That's good. There's another thing when your opposing party makes the argument that you're trying to make against them unwittingly. That's even better. But here you're actually getting the church to dance to your tune and revealing how misplaced their priorities are in disciplining you and not taking care of the problem. That must be the best feeling of all.
Well, I tell you, the best feeling of all
Yeah.
is feeling like children have been protected to a large degree and that a huge amount of healing had occurred with adults who were harmed as children.
Very good. Any thoughts from either of you two before we go into protect every child and climb every mountain?
I would just say that Sam brought awareness, a lot of awareness. And if you're still active in the church, good for you. But if you allow your kids in with these guys, even with the token improvements that they've made, that's on you, because these guys cannot be trusted. They're not trained. And like I said earlier, they let anything out of their mouth that they want, including exploring their own perverted, twisted questions. It's disgusting. I'll just say quickly, I was 7 when I had my first bishop's interview. I didn't know what was going on. It was very intimidating. I'm 7. Here's this guy, friend of the family. He asked me as a 7-year-old if I masturbated. I didn't know what he was talking about. I never heard the word before. And I went to school the following Monday, and I asked my friends around the lunch table, hey, does anybody know what masturbate means? I say it real loud because I have no idea what it means. And they're all like, no. And then this one goes, oh, yeah, that's where you play with your ding-a-ling. And all of us are looking around like, who would do that? I learned this garbage by going to the bishop. I had a solid 5 years of just innocent childhood, and it was eroded by a freak, a freak bishop.
Yeah. You were excommunicated, Sam, for showing them their blind spots, which means you were only holding up a mirror to them. They didn't like what they saw. All you did was say, look what you're doing. Here's the change to make. Do the thing. And they didn't like looking in the mirror and seeing what they saw.
They had the chance. These guys, these cats in Salt Lake City, they had the chance to walk away from this by giving you a meeting with an apostle and not trying to satisfy you with a measly piece of paper. They knew what you were going to do because you told them, right? So they knew what they were looking at, and they decided that they were going to deceive you in this way and try and get you to walk away and be quiet with a worthless piece of paper in your hand. So, in my opinion, they knew what was coming and they got what they deserved. Hey, Bill, before we get to this next part, which I think will be the final conclusion, which is going to catch us up on what, Sam has been doing since then. Can we read any super chats that have come in? I know there's a few that I saw go by.
Yeah, so here they are. So let me so this is, I'll let you read these if you want.
Absolutely. So Theodus J. Whoopi, thank you, Bill, RFM, and Randy for this incredibly important discussion. Sam, you are absolutely a superhero. Thank you for all you have done to protect our children and to raise awareness. Hearts and thanks.
Thank you very much. Nice.
Yeah, he's a great guy, isn't he? This is from M3 Blazy. Sam, thank you for giving children a voice when they couldn't speak for themselves and educating parents to accompany kids during interviews. You've moved the needle. Great meeting you at Thrive.
Well, great meeting you too.
Oh, another one from Theodus J. Whoopi. He just cannot tell you enough how much he loves you, Sam. One of the best Mormon discussion episodes ever. 3 exclamation points. Love, thank you, thanks, thank you, thank you. Well done. We love you, Sam. You are absolutely a superhero.
Oh, man.
And
Thank
where's
you.
the cape to prove it, too? You want to mention the cape there, Sam?
Mention the cape?
Yes.
Well, the next year, so after the excommunication, I sat and thought for a couple weeks, well, do I quit now? But no, I'm not. They have given me the gift of an excommunication. Now, I'm not quitting. I was going to quit. I'm not quitting. I'm going to do this for another year. So we then changed it from protecting LDS children to we should be protecting every child because this issue is in every church, in every organization. So we changed it to protect every child. And to raise awareness, came up with the here's because I've already done all this stuff. What do we do next? And so it came up with let's encourage people to climb a mountain or just a hill or even climb to the top of your driveway and post a flag. Take a photo with you and your flag and then post it all over the place to raise awareness that we need to be protecting about the issue of protecting our children. And so we climbed a ton of mountains, a ton of people climbed mountains all over the world and shared them and posted them. There were people that got in trouble with their bishops and stake presidents for posting about this. But
now that was the march, but I want to show a few of these pictures here while you're talking about them over there at your website of protecteverychild.com. And there's a number of pictures and everybody who walked or hiked to the top of a mountain or like you said, a hill or wherever, they could send in pictures which you would gather here. Here's a special picture.
And this was the very first day that I announced it. I announced it on January 1st and on New Year's Eve, my grandkids and I, we made 3 flags for each one of them. And we then climbed to the top of Enchanted Rock, which you may know that. And it's a big rock, beautiful rock in Texas, and did our first posting banners and sharing them. So those are 3 of my grandkids.
Enchanted Rock. That sounds like it was in Joseph Smith's backyard. But these are 3 of your grandkids, huh?
Yep.
Wonderful. And here's somebody that I've heard of. I think that's Martine and Stuart.
You got it.
There's a bunch of them here. And this is you, but where are you in this picture?
I'm the one that doesn't have a flag. I'm holding a prayer. I'm holding a piece of paper that had a prayer on it. And I pronounced a prayer over the children at the top of Kilimanjaro.
Mount Kilimanjaro?
Kilimanjaro,
Hey, who's in that orange sweater? Do you know who that is, Randy?
No,
Are you there?
I'm there. Sam was over at my house spending the weekend, and Sam said, "Hey, I think I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You want to come?" And like a total dumbass, I said yes without thinking about what I was saying yes to. I'm not much of a hiker, but we made it. We made it.
You remember what I said when you asked me?
No.
Yeah, that's what I said. No
Hell
chance.
no.
Yes. So, but you were at the top of Mount Everest, not Everest, excuse me.
Kilimanjaro.
We'll get there in a second. Mount Kilimanjaro with your Protect Every Child flags.
Yeah. So this had climbing Kilimanjaro. I've had one bucket list item my whole life, and that was to climb Kilimanjaro. So when this came up, I'm looking, you know what? I'm going to combine my bucket list with my cause. And that's why I climbed with Randy the Mount Kilimanjaro. There are actually 4 of us that climbed together.
Well, that way it's deductible.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but
well, it might be too late to be thinking about it, but there's always the future.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, wait a second here. There was another one. Oh, I had put it on, I think, after you'd loaded these up, Bill, right before the show. That was when I was putting on the one from Everest, because you did a similar thing at Mount Everest, and you similarly asked me, and I similarly said no, except I probably made it a little more spicy than that. And you both went over to Mount Everest and climbed up to different elevations on it. And we'll have that here in a second. But can you tell us a story about Everest, Sam?
Well,
thank you.
Okay, so there's base camp at Everest. Now, Randy's not in the picture. He was on the trip, but didn't manage to get in the picture for one reason or other.
Was he flying back on a helicopter?
Yeah, he decided to take the expensive route and the route that most sane people would take on the helicopter.
I thought it was because he said, "Screw this! I'm charging on to the top alone."
Well, he probably did. We probably got there a long time after him. But anyway, what happened is after Kilimanjaro, that was so hard. One of my knees was messed up. I had to have surgery the next year. But when we're afterwards, Randy said, "You know, I've always wanted to climb to Everest Base Camp." And I thought, no way, I'm done. That I had one super hard experience. I don't want to do that again. But he kept pressing, and finally I said, fine. Randy, I don't think I ever told you there's no way I wanted to do that. But at some point I said, yeah, let's do it. And I brought my flags along. So our flags have been on Everest and Kilimanjaro and a whole bunch of other places where a whole bunch of people went with us.
Okay, Sam, I hate to ask this, but which one are you in this picture?
Well, I'm in the first row there,
yeah,
and I've got the yellow flag second from the right.
Okay, that's you.
With a beanie on.
Got it. Perfect. And there's proof that you were there. Amazing. Well, this is amazing. And I tell you what, go ahead and sum up where you are since then, what you're doing now, why it is that you're coming public on our show. And then maybe we can have a few people call in. We can clear some lines for 3 people to call in and maybe talk to you a little.
Yeah, we're going to get this up to 3 or 4 hours for sure. We're at 2 hours now. Yeah, it's going to be 3 or 4 or 5. Okay.
It won't be more than 3.
Now? So when I came, now this is answering Randy's question about the financial thing.
Mm-hmm.
This was expensive. I was willing to spend money because this is the only time I'm going to be doing this in my life. This cause doesn't present itself very often. And so like the first news conference we had in Salt Lake City, I spent a ton of money on that news conference. After a few of those news conferences, I held one on the street. I got just as many people on the street. So, but I spent a lot of money. And after 3 years, almost 3 years doing this, my focus was no longer on my business. So I'm not really leading the business. The business owner needs to lead it. We had about 35 employees. And I had some really good folks that really took the reins, but it's not the same thing not having the guidance from the owner. So after, in 2019, we climbed about 20 mountains in Utah and climbed other mountains like in Oregon and West Virginia and some other places, Colorado. But so all that was done. Comes December. Our last hike was in November. And these up and downs. Now I've had a great up for 3 years. And now I have this gigantic crash where I have to face not only the thing of the ups and downs, but I have to face reality and the reality of my financial situation. I got sick. I was sick for 3 weeks, probably because of how bad I felt and looking at the finances. So that year I had to write $163,000 in checks to pay for all kinds, even though we had a bunch of donations. That came out of my retirement savings. And then the business lost $300,000. We're talking about 450, almost 500,000, like almost $500,000 wiped out that year. And when you're a small business owner, you lose $300,000. It's not just something on balance sheet. That comes out of your pocket. So I was just very depressed about how underwater, accomplished wonderful things, but now I'm so underwater. How do I turn this around? I'm not a young guy anymore. At that point, I'm 67 years old. If you're 35, if you're 45, even 55, you've got some runway. I got no runway anymore. And how am I going to turn this around? The only thing I could think of was nobody would buy my business. I can only do this, give it away to some sucker. I called my brother, who was a partner, and I told him that I think we're sunk. Help me figure out how to give it away. Well, he kind of talked me from the ledge, and then by the end of December, I kind of had one of those moments like I did when my friend kind of said, "I'm not going to testify," and I pulled myself out of it by saying, "Oh, fuck it." Well, I didn't say that, but that's the attitude I had. I'm going to do this. I'm going to jump in and do this. And fortunately, the pandemic hit and it saved us. I won't go through that story, but we were able to bring the company back, and it did really well all through the pandemic. And but yeah, so the end of this wonderful thing was I was depressed, thought this is the financial thing, I'm dead, but it all worked out.
Thank you for that story and telling us about it and bringing us up to the present. Is there anything that you have planned in the future now, Sam?
Well, I don't have much planned in the future, but we have continued to maintain a Facebook presence. So we still have the Protect Every Child Facebook page. We get a lot of interactions there. I have a friend from the Protect the Children days that wanted to jump in and help out with that. So basically, when I turned back the business, I said, okay, I would like you to take the reins with our Facebook stuff. Her name is Katie Moore. She's done a fantastic job. She posts all kinds of stuff regularly. She's very engaged in that. And we still have people reaching out to us with issues and questions and so on. So that's been a significant thing. But I haven't really looked at other plans like that we did for those 3 years.
Okay. Any comments from you two? I know we've got DG in the studio. He may have a question or two for Sam. Hey, DG, you're from the same state as Sam, aren't you? You're practically next door.
Practically.
He's in Lubbock, Sam.
Hey, DG. Greetings to Lubbock.
Greetings from Lubbock and greetings to Houston. And I can't tell you what a marvelous blessing this is to me to hear your story. I've heard about you. I've heard, many accolades and the timeline for the years back, and how it impacted the church here, what you did. But to share the screen with you is a great honor and a blessing. And Bill and RFM, I don't know what it is about tonight's show, but it's really got me in the feels tonight for some reason. But Sam, it is by small and simple things that great things are brought to pass. And you have done more to change the church with standing on the shoulders of John DeLynn and these wonderful brethren here. But what you have done has been so impressive. And the extent that what it took, I think, as Bill marvelously articulated earlier, the embarrassment and just outright stupidity that you demonstrated of the leadership of that organization and what it took to get them to change. I know that in my stake here, when I was still attending 3 years ago, all of the doors were removed from the primary classrooms in our stake center because they did not have the windows.
Oh, wow.
And they had to have they put the window doors in instead, so that at least people could look in to make sure that there was no untoward activity going in those classrooms. I remember when the policy was, we're going to start interviewing children with parents present, or at least two people present in those interviews. We had a split in our stake. So we have two stakes here in Lubbock, and my stake president of the North stake was way behind this. He was fully supportive of this endeavor. And I will say the president of the South stake, the original stake, was not. In fact, he was wanting to enforce the old rules where, no, you will ask those difficult questions. And I know former bishops from the South stake, we get together and have lunch occasionally. And one of the bishops told me personally, he was not going to do that, even under the orders of the stake president, because the stake president had an edict that we were not getting enough quality missionaries called. And the only way we could get better missionaries was to explore their sexual escapades before their mission. And this bishop wasn't going to do that. He was released very soon after that. He told me that from his ward, my previous ward before the split, there was at least 3 young men that were very much looking forward to their missions that were not allowed to go because of how they answered those very pointed questions, in not just with the bishop, but with the stake president. So there's still much work to be done. And I think of all the stories that you've read and compiled is probably just barely scratching the surface. And I think that's probably what's bothering me so much tonight is there's so much evil that's still out there, and yet it's so simple to prevent. And this gets back to an earlier episode that Bill and RFM, I guess it was the newscast on Monday, where they had that opening paragraph where the church says, we take children's protection seriously and we do all that we can. And it's just an outright lie. The church, just with Wade Christensen's case alone, proves it is none of that. And you have continuously and constantly, with so many others, proven this time and time again. I'm involved in several other organizations involving youth, and it's impressive to me what they do to protect their youth, protect the children. And yet the church that claims to be Christ's very church on earth won't even do that. That alone speaks volumes. And I'm touched by what you've done. I'm grateful for what you've done. And I thank you, brethren, for tonight's show.
Hey, DG in Lubbock, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you, DG. Thank you.
All right. Wow. You're still impressing hearts and minds, Sam. Jared is now on the show. Jared, what do you have to say? Good to see you.
I have to say, I've heard of Sam Young for a long time. I actually thought he would actually be younger than he is from what he is. I didn't expect an older gentleman. And I applaud you for what you've done. Ever since I heard what you did, I've never allowed my kids to ever be interviewed by a member of the priesthood by themselves. And I think that should be the standard alone. I don't think any child should be anywhere near any grown adult in a room alone by themselves. And I applaud you for what you've done. And thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for taking the action to protect your own children. That's great.
Yeah. You know, and I probably wouldn't have if it wasn't for you. So I have to say that. And then I also want to go back to the Monday newscast and say that what was interesting to me was how that the church's response to I listened to the podcast and I can't remember the gentleman's name that was on John DeLynn that exposed that.
Ed Nachos.
Oh, Nachos.
Nachos. It's what is it?
Natural.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, what a great guy that guy was to come out and say what he said. But in response, the church's response to that, I thought the interesting part was when they made the claim that Elder Christofferson had come out and contacted the legal authorities.
Yes.
And not, to me, if you had called the police, you would say law enforcement, not legal authorities.
Mm.
So to me, that was, he called Curtin McConkie.
Oh, I'll bet you're right.
Good
Me
catch.
on myself.
Right. That's why I was asking,
and-
what does that look like when D. Todd Christofferson picks up the phone and says,
He
"All
didn't
right,
call the police.
I need to turn my brother in."
My brother's a molester. What are you going to do about it? No, he
That
didn't
never
call
happened.
them. He called the legal authorities, and they worded that very carefully. So the people who are just listening to that statement by the church could very easily confuse that into being he contacted law enforcement.
You see, that kind of stuff.
I think that was worded weird.
Well, it was intentionally, and good call, because that stuff is not just a lie. When you do that, that's a damnable lie.
Yeah,
it's not
well,
something that's not a lie, guys. Just so you know, this is how God and Jesus talk about it. When you try and deceive people by telling the truth, that's the worst thing of all. No, there's one thing that's worse, and that's when you do it in the name of God. So I think you have that base covered too.
So yes, I thought that was, I recognized that. I was like, why is that? That just is so weirded. That was so weirdly worded. Like, why? I mean, you'd say law enforcement, not legal authorities, because even law enforcement aren't legal authorities.
Frequently not.
I agree with that too, but that's another end. But anyway, that being said, thank you, Sam Young. Although you're not as young as I thought you would be.
Okay, I'm 73 and I'm proud of it.
Well, good for you. You got many more years of wisdom on me, but I appreciate what you did, because like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made that stance with my children. I've stepped away from the church. You know, my kids still, I have one child that still goes, because she has friends there, and it's a nuanced thing, right? But like, I do not allow her to be interviewed alone, and if I don't feel like I even want her interviewed, I just say no, she's not coming to get interviewed. So too bad. Do what you want to do. It's not like she has the priesthood, or we'll get it in the next 5 years at least, until maybe Dell and somebody does. But we'll see how that goes.
Jared, I'm glad you're taking steps to protect your kids, and I'm glad that Sam inspired you to do so.
He did.
All right.
So,
well, thank you for calling in, and hopefully I'll see you Friday.
Yes. Well, we'll see. We'll see how many adult beverages I get in.
All right. Bring some for everybody. You got to share.
Well,
right.
I would if you were around. See ya.
See you, Jared. And finally, from Mongolia, and I'm not kidding, Sam, it's Diamond Dave calling in from the other side of the world.
Wow. Yeah, I'm in Mongolia, and I have my adult beverage right here. So,
what is that? Is that yak juice?
It's Asahi.
That's what I said.
Yes. No, these are great phone calls. And I mean, I've heard of Sam Young as well a lot. Jared thought you would be younger. I thought you would be taller because you just took down the entire Mormon Church.
And I thought you'd be better looking.
Well, you're the only one that messed up.
Yeah, I heard the name Sam Young and just like all the things that you did, and I'm thinking this guy's like, you know, just this rip dude that has just like tearing into like, you know, lawyers left and right.
He's like,
but it's cool.
Wait. Diamond Dave, I am totally ripped, but I'm not going to take off my clothes to demonstrate it.
Oh, well, okay. But all joking aside, I'm very curious about this because there's a lot of talk about this in the chat, and I've heard so many horror stories of abuse, and you've compiled all these stories of abuse. How the hell do you stay sane? Like what? Like how do you go through all of this and just come out with a smile on your face?
Well, there is some time between when it happened and now. So all this happened in 2018, reading all those stories, talking to a ton of people. Well, we're now in 2026. So time does make a difference. And as I mentioned on the podcast, at the end of this, I was in big financial trouble. And so I had to dive in and put all my capacity into getting things to work. So I had some big distractions, and there's been time. But you're right; it was really tough back then.
Dave, let me tell you this, because when I was talking with Sam on the phone about this, I think he was a little bit more forthcoming with me privately than he has been relating the story publicly. So I'm going to fill in the gaps if that's okay with you, Sam.
Uh-oh.
What he told me is that when he was going through this and assimilating and accumulating the stories, he would go to work for a full day, then he'd come home, and for hours he would read these stories because he read them all, every single one of them. And for hours while he's reading them, he would be in tears. For hours every night while he was going through that. And I'm sure that lasted weeks and months. Is that right, Sam?
Yeah. And I had counselors warn me that you don't want to do this all the time because you are going to be feeling the same trauma that these kids felt or these adults are feeling now. And they were right. But that it did affect me, but I don't think they're right that it was as drastic with me as it was with the adults that feel it today. I can't feel that depth, but yeah, I got people telling you be careful about how much time you spend reading these things.
No, well, yeah, I mean, that's just impressive because, I mean, you know, just the few stories that I've heard and then other people talking, it's like, it's really hard for me to not like get angry and like not do something stupid because I am one of those people, you know, so I just respect you so much. And I appreciate you guys letting me call on and actually ask these questions because I've heard so much about you. And I think I've actually heard about you before I joined the Mormon Church in 2020. I just didn't have a face to put to the name. But yeah, I mean, and since I live in Mongolia now, I mean, you're known internationally, so there's that too.
Wow. Now, so you joined the church in 2020?
I joined the church in 2020, and then I left in 2024-ish, late 2023, early 2024.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in and out in 1/10 the time of me.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Thank you for having me on. So it's a privilege to meet you. So thank you.
Good to meet you. Thank you very much for your kind comments.
Can I share a quick little story just to speak to the kind of person you are, Sam? As I was going through my meetings with my stake president and there was a church court announced, you called me. I remember getting a phone call from you and you reached out to me when I was in the process of getting ready to go in, and the court was inevitable. It was scheduled. It was happening. And you said, Bill, I just want to give you a heads up. Like, having been through that process, I felt a lot and wanted you to be prepared in case you feel a lot. And I had a very different experience than that, but it was such a big deal to have you reach out and to express a concern like, hey, Bill, just be wary. There's this really big thing that might be over there, and to be, have it on your mind now so you can figure out how to better deal with that and how you treat the situation. And it was so kind to me. It was such a helpful thing to be able to reflect and to go into that with a lot of intention.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Bill. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That is nice. Thanks. Randy, you want to say something, and then we're going to give Sam Young the final word, and then I'll take us home.
Yeah, just a quick couple things. One is what you hear that the the LDS church leaders say that the Mormon Church has the gold standard. I'm calling BS. I'll tell you what the gold standard is. You don't just put a little window in the door. You have a glass door. You have glass walls. You have cameras in every classroom. And when your kid needs to go to the bathroom, they text the parents to take them. And they always have two deep leadership who are screened by the police and FBI clearance once a year. That's what real child protection looks like. The Mormon Church doesn't even come close to that standard. So I just wanted to say, compare and contrast what real organizations do versus trashy organizations. I think Bill Reel needs honorable mention because he was excommunicated for simply telling the truth. And I think what was so profound about your story, Bill, was simply that they admitted you hadn't said a single thing that wasn't true. And Sam Young, and here we have two bishops excommunicated, one for telling the truth and Sam Young for protecting children. I mean, what planet are we living on where this happens, where two distinguished bishops with integrity stand up for the ultimate causes and get excommunicated for it? That tells us something. And, Jesus himself taught, stand up against corrupt church leaders. That's what Bill Reel did. And stand up against child abuse. And that's what Sam Young did. I mean, again, we're very privileged. Sam, there's so much more stuff you should have said and could have said. I'm happy that your business, I don't think you fully shared the magnificent turnaround that you experienced after really taking a hammering, but it couldn't happen to a better guy. I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I love that.
Thank you, Randy. Sam, the floor is yours for closing comments.
Okay, so I am just a guy. So a lot of people look up to me. A lot of people appreciate what I've done. But you heard saw heroes in the comments, and I appreciate that. But I also want people to know and recognize that they have that same hero in them. They're a normal person like me. They don't have I'm not super intelligent. I'm not super brave. I'm not super crafty. I'm a normal guy, a normal dad, concerned about his kids. So doing something amazing doesn't need a totally amazing person. So I just if you have the opportunity to stand up for that vulnerable person, you can do that. We can all do that. Little things, somebody said this, little things go a long way. They set up other people for amazing things in their life that we'll never see. We'll never know. We don't know. Just like me calling Bill, well, I didn't know that had any effect on him at all. I actually can't even remember that I called you, Bill. But it made a difference to Bill. There are things that all of us will do. I was down in Guatemala last week and found a family that I lived with, found a woman I lived with. She told me a story. I haven't been there for 54 years. She was 16 years old when I was there. And she didn't recognize me. I didn't recognize her. And and she was with her brother, remember the stake presidency, as soon as I said my name, their faces lighted up for something I had never heard of before that involved me, that I had done something that had lived with them in joy all these years. We never know what kind of impact we have on people. So it wasn't just me doing this. It was tens of thousands of people coming to a march, climbing a mountain, tens of thousands of people not saying anything, but protecting their children, taking action to protect their children. All these things folded into an amazing thing that happened during those 3 years. And if it wasn't just me, it was all these people. I want to thank you. If you were involved in that, thank you very much. If you weren't involved in that and take action to protect children, hallelujah. I want to compliment you and congratulate you. Okay, that's probably good enough. Since we're at 2 hours and 30 minutes now.
Well, 2:45, but who's counting? No, you can count the seeds in an apple, Sam, but you can't count the apples in a seed.
Great, yeah.
As the saying goes. All right, everybody, please hit like, please hit subscribe on this great channel. Please go to mormondiscussions.org and make a donation if you haven't already. For those of you who have, thank you so much. Your donations are what keep us on the air and keep us having great guests like Sam Young and Randall Bell, who's going to be on Radio Free Mormon this coming Saturday. We've got some talking and planning and recording to do between now and then, Randy. We'll get to that, won't we? Yes,
Cool.
we will. And thank you, Bill, as always. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching. And I don't know. I almost think to say, let's remember Sam in our prayers. But maybe if we're still praying, we should pray for all those kids out there who are still, laboring under what is not the gold standard in the LDS church. And hopefully they can come around and wake up and smell the Java and put kids before the good name of the church. That's what we can all pray for and hope for and work toward as we go forward. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. Until next time, this is Mormonism Live. Please join us next week for another great episode. Good night.